Everyone else woke up in the virtual survival world clueless, punching at blocks while their hunger and thirst drained toward death. I woke up as Kang Jae-yoon, the one man among 900 million who had poured 9 years into Minecraft and already knew it all. My first kills won me an omniscient combat maid named Lillian, and a furnace empire selling one glass bottle for 500 gold. Then the 9 nether buff turned me into an instant kill phantom who one-shot a 500 health snake girl boss the whole world swore could not be touched. The beginner they expected to die first had been the master all along. Smash that like button and subscribe so you do not miss the next part. The channel grows when you do. But none of this happened overnight. Let me start from the day it all broke open. In the year 7959, Blue Star finally choked on its own poison. The pollution had grown so severe that the surface could no longer keep anyone alive, and the government's solution was to move all of humanity into a virtual world, a place the experts swore was infinitely large and stocked with everything a person could need to survive. The reconnaissance had been rushed, so almost nothing was confirmed except one strange detail, that this new world did not behave like a normal one. Its mechanics, the briefing said, resembled a hyper-realistic survival game. Reading all this in the newspaper, I felt a dull ache behind my eyes, because the part nobody wanted to say out loud was that today was the day the whole migration happened, and my timing for getting dropped into a body on this dying planet could not have been worse. So much for transmigration. I had spent enough years alive to think I understood how the universe worked, and then it handed me a parallel world that was already collapsing. If fate was going to yank me out of my old life, I thought, it could at least have dropped me somewhere decent. An ancient era where I could pass off famous poems as my own, or a spiritual energy world with a cheat waiting in my palm. Instead, I got Blue Star, a poisoned rock where humanity was about to vanish entirely. I put the newspaper down as the bell outside my door rang. Everyone lived in sealed basements below the surface now, each room piped with oxygen and wired to a universal machine. The announcement told everyone to prepare for migration and step into their machines, because the oxygen would cut out in 1 minute, and anyone who stayed behind would simply suffocate. That was the whole choice then. The migration would teleport all 900 million of us in a single minute, and after that Blue Star would have no living space left for a single human being. I felt my nerves tighten as I crossed the room, because even if I came from somewhere else, I was still human, and the fate of every human alive was hanging on the next 60 seconds. I closed my eyes and stepped into the machine that looked something like a time capsule. The glass cover lowered and sealed me in, the timer counted down to 0, and the oxygen in the basement cut out on the dot. A blinding white light swallowed everything in front of me, and a voice murmured at my ear that space was teleporting, new world data was loading, that my mental value was normal, my cardiopulmonary function was normal, my breathing was normal, my mental consciousness connecting. Then the light died, and I came down soft onto a patch of grass. I opened my eyes to a blue sky stitched with white clouds, a lush green field under me, saplings nearby, and the clean smell of grass in my lungs. I got to my feet to take in the world, and that was when it hit me, because everything here was made of blocks, and the blocks were impossibly gut-punchingly familiar. This was Minecraft. The thought landed in my head and would not leave, and a surge of excitement ran straight from my chest to my skull. I crouched and started punching the grass block at my feet, and in under a second it broke and vanished into my inventory. I opened the inventory, and the first slot read 1 dirt. It really was Minecraft, and I nearly cried. You have to understand what this game meant to me. Back home I was a die-hard player. 9 full years of my life poured into it. No regrets entering this game in this life. And may I be a block person in the next. That was my motto, scratched into my soul since middle school, the thing that carried me through one all-nighter after another. I remembered the first time I crafted a torch, the first time I killed a zombie and slept with a blanket over my head, the first time I dug up iron ore and felt a joy I would carry to my grave. The game had grown better year by year as I grew older, the texture packs and shaders and mods piling adventure on adventure, and somewhere in those 9 years I had even met my wife on a server. We chatted. We built a survival world together, 2 little red beds pushed side by side, a small house, a field, a pasture, and a whole life of mining and farming and killing monsters together. We fell for each other inside the game, married inside the game, then met offline and married for real. This was never just a game to me, it was my youth, my nights, my faith. I had dreamed of a world exactly like this, and now I was standing in it. I looked toward the oak forest in the distance, my excitement past hiding, and ran for the nearest tree to punch it. Just then a message blinked in the bottom corner of my vision, telling me the player had connected to the world and the world channel was open. The channel was already an avalanche. Strangers were marveling that the experts had been right for once, asking what the blocks were even for, comparing notes that one had spawned on a grassland thick with cattle and sheep, while another had landed in a desert, panicking that this felt like being thrown back into a primeval forest. And one of them noticing the chicken leg and water drop icons that meant hunger and thirst were already ticking down. I read it all, and something in me went very still. None of these people had ever played Minecraft. The world we had been dropped into was Blue Star's virtual frontier, not the original game, which meant every survivor out there was lost, fumbling at blocks they did not understand. Out of 900 million people, I was the only one who knew the crafting recipes. That realization lit me up like a fuse. If I was the only one who knew how everything was made, then I could do whatever I wanted in this world, build whatever I wanted, climb as high as I wanted, until my name shook the whole world. First things first though, in this game there is a sacred saying that to get rich you punch a tree, because all survival begins with wood. I had nothing on me, practically a caveman, and if I did not prepare I would either starve or be torn apart by zombies before nightfall. I punched down 2 oak trees, broke the logs into oak wood planks, and crafted a crafting table from 4 of them. From there I cut planks into sticks and made a wooden pickaxe, then dug straight down through a few layers of grass until exposed cobblestone showed up underneath. Seeing it gave me a thrill I had not expected. 9 years of this game, and yet this was my first time living it. Smelling the flowers, feeling the sun, hearing the insects, my hands genuinely touching the blocks and shaping tools at a real crafting table. No game had ever felt like this. I mined in my old staircase style, neat and tidy, easy to climb in and out of, because messy caves had always bothered me. After about half a stack of cobblestone, the wooden pickaxe was nearly spent, but I had no intention of babying it. With a steady source of cobblestone, I could step straight into the Stone Age. I crafted a stone pickaxe, a stone axe, a stone shovel, a stone hoe, and a stone sword. And looking at that clean matching set in my pack, I felt a real sense of accomplishment. The trees I had felled had finished dropping their leaves, leaving 2 oak saplings and a single apple on the grass. I picked the apple up, wiped it on my shirt and bit in, and the sweet juice burst across my tongue with a crispness that nearly stopped me cold. This was the best apple I had ever eaten. Far better than anything from my old life. As I chewed, I noticed it restored 1 point of hunger and 1 of thirst, where in the game an apple had always given 2. The mechanics here were harsher, which meant food would be a real problem alongside the monsters. This is going to be a very long first night. I decided to dig more cobblestone for a furnace, then go hunting. If I could bring down a sheep or a cow, I would not have to worry about food today. I carried my stone pickaxe down the shaft, pulled a stack and a half of cobblestone, and came back up to a sun already sinking toward the horizon. A full day and night here lasted only about an hour and a half of real time, so I had to move fast. I smelted. No, first I made the furnace, packed it and the crafting table into my pack, rather than settle in this spot, slotted the stone sword into my first slot, and set out across the plains. I had spawned on a plain where sheep and cattle should be everywhere, yet I wandered half the day without finding a single animal, not even a chicken. People, though, were everywhere, and compared to my steady survival, they looked completely lost. Plucking a flower, digging up a block of dirt, splashing into the river with no idea what any of it was for. The channel filled with their hunger, someone down to 5 points and starving, someone wondering if leaves were edible, someone who tried to drink straight from the river and found the water undrinkable, someone begging the Federal Association for an answer. The association's reply was thin to the point of insult. The representatives told everyone to find their own way to survive while researchers worked on countermeasures. Then added that native residents lived in this world and that people could ask them for help or barter with a wandering merchant, and signed off. The channel curdled at once, survivors snapping that they had just been told to fend for themselves, that they had walked into a village hoping for food only to be beaten, that they had tried to grab a single carrot and gotten thrashed for it. I shrugged to myself and kept walking. If I did not know the recipes or where food came from, I would be exactly as lost as they were, so I could hardly blame them. None of it was my concern though, because I understood this world better than anyone alive. The sky kept darkening, and for the first time I felt a real edge of danger. This world ran a little different from the game I knew, and I could not be sure one stone sword would hold off the zombies at night. To be safe, I would not hunt outside after dark, which meant I needed enough food laid in before sunset. I circled the plains again hoping for a cow or a sheep to butcher, and again found nothing, which told me the spawn rate here was far lower than in the game, or there would have been animals everywhere. Chopping trees for apples would have to do. I found an oak grove and cut relentlessly. 7 trees in, and my hunger and thirst both fell to 5 segments. Apples alone could not keep up, since each one gave only a single point against everything my labor burned. But I had no better option for tonight. I let the leaves fall on their own to save time, and broke the fresh logs into planks, then threw together a 5x5x3 matchbox of a house, because monsters would come and a stone sword was no guarantee against an unknown world. By the time I finished, the leaves had dropped, and 7 trees had given me 10 saplings and 5 apples, a generous rate that still was not enough. I wiped the apples clean and ate 3, and the taste was just as astonishing as the first, crisp and huge and sweeter than anything I had known. My hunger and thirst climbed back to 8 segments. I would only lose strength below 3, but the realism here was such that by 5 I already felt genuinely hungry, so I had to eat to push the feeling back. I set the furnace and crafting table inside the house, and by then full dark had fallen with no coal in my hands and no light source. Feeling around in the blackness, I fed the fresh oak saplings into the furnace to burn, and a faint glow filled the room, enough to remind me that saplings and logs both make charcoal, and charcoal, like coal, makes torches. I burned a few pieces, crafted 8 torches, and set 4 in the corners, and the room lit up bright. There is always a particular satisfaction in looking at something you made with your own hands, and the realism of this place made it sweeter than any game ever had. That satisfaction lasted right up until I heard the low growl of zombies outside the door. They had arrived, just as I expected. I was about to go greet them when a scream cut across the plain, and not far off, several people were sprinting from a swarm of zombies. One poor man bitten on the backside before he had even pulled his pants up. They scattered in terror, one timid girl crying for the others to wait, and I poked my head out and found the whole comical scene strangely funny. They were not the only ones running for their lives tonight, judging by the channel, which had erupted with people demanding to know why no one had warned them about zombies and pleading with the representatives to do something before they were all strangled to death. The representatives finally offered something useful, that anyone helpless against zombies could seal themselves inside a box of blocks, since zombies cannot break blocks. The channel turned on them instantly for not saying so sooner, and the representatives only admitted they had just figured it out too. By morning, half of these people may not be people anymore. The zombie attack broke most of them. They had come from a technological blue star into a primitive nightmare, exhausted by a single day, and now hunted through the night, and the gap was more than they could swallow. They complained without pause, asking how this was any different from the end of the world, mourning 4 hearts lost in one brief brush with a zombie, with someone pointing out grimly that at least the zombies all moved at the same slow speed and could not outrun a person, and someone else noting that you could simply hide. But hiding did nothing for the ones down to 2 points of hunger, and the channel had no comfort left to give. People raised in a world that had never known true hunger had nothing to say to each other anymore. I typed 8 words into the channel and sent them, that this was survival of the fittest, natural selection. The reaction was immediate fury, strangers raging that I was preaching the law of the jungle at them, that they were modern people who could not be expected to live like this, that I, this Kang Jae-hyun, was all talk and would not last 2 days myself. I read the pylon and shrugged. I told them they were residents of this world now, not modern people, that those who adapted would live, and those who could not would die, and then I stopped wasting words on a crowd of keyboard warriors. I drew my stone sword and listened to the zombies outside. The apples I had stored would not carry me through the night, and back in the game I had often eaten rotten flesh when nothing else was around, so the flesh here would surely do in a pinch. When survival demanded it, I did not mind sacrificing my sense of taste. A man can't run on an empty stomach. My hunger had already dipped to 5 just from typing, and at that burn rate it was no wonder people were starving to death on day 1. I could not save all of them, and I had never carried a hero's dream, so I let it go. I only had to take care of myself. I broke a block from the bottom of my house, and the zombies were drawn straight to my scent, crowding the opening without ever reaching me. This trick is called foot trimming, a classic way to farm monsters. A zombie stands 2 blocks tall and can only swing from the upper block, so if you seal every upper block and leave only the floor open, you can kill all night without taking a scratch. The zombies pressed at the hole, growling like they wanted me dead, while I stood there far calmer than anyone out on the channel. I had killed hundreds of these things, maybe 1,000. They had terrified me once long ago, and now killing one was like crushing an ant. I swung my stone sword at the first one, and a red health bar appeared above it reading 40. In the game, a zombie has only 20 health, so these were doubled, and when I checked my damage it was the familiar 5. 2 times the health, the same damage, which made this world roughly double the difficulty I knew. That gave me a chill, a reminder to stay careful, but I kept foot trimming, and when the first one finally fell, the screen seemed to freeze for a beat. A message congratulated Kang Jae-hyun on the world's first zombie kill and promised a reward, and my pack flashed as something dropped into it. First zombie kill? I mouthed the words puzzled while the channel detonated. Strangers demanded to know who had killed a zombie, swore they had hit one only to watch it instantly heal, accused this Kang Jae-hyun of cheating, with someone snapping back that you cannot cheat a world that is no longer a game. They marveled that someone had killed one of the monsters chasing all of them, connected my name to the survival of the fittest line, and grudgingly admitted that maybe the loudmouth had the strength to back it up after all. Of course I do. That first kill did more than annoy them, it gave them hope, because if a human could kill a zombie, then humans were not helpless. They kept asking how I had done it, how a barehanded punch did nothing to a zombie while I cut one down. I had no time to answer. I had noticed a new line on my information panel, gold coins, and the kill had pushed me to 5 gold. I did not know yet what gold was for, but if killing monsters gave coins, then somewhere in this world there was a place to spend them. A marketplace, which was something the original game never had. I filed it away to research come daylight. I opened my pack to check the reward, and it was an egg, something I had never seen in survival, with a tiny manual beside it that said only 3 words, Maid-chan, and nothing else. A book with 3 words in it. I held the egg up and turned it over, remembering that the game had maid eggs and zombie eggs and skeleton eggs, all locked to creative mode, which I had barely touched, though I at least knew how an egg like this was used. I threw it down, and a cute little maid appeared in front of me. I checked her information, and it was different from the maid mod I remembered. Her panel listed her owner's name as Kang Jae-hyun, which meant I would not have to tame her with cake or feed her candy. And where the old mod's maids could only fight or hold torches, this one could do anything. Marriage and children apparently not off the table. Her functions were so complete she was indistinguishable from a real person, with a consciousness of her own, which she proved when she tilted her head, having already noticed me staring, and asked her master why he was looking at her like that. Her voice was sweet, and that single word, master, sent something warm right through my chest. I asked whether she had a name, and she answered that she did not, then asked obediently whether her master wished to give her one. Surviving alone was always going to be lonely, and I had worried about adjusting to this world with no familiar face in it. But with her beside me, that worry eased. I told her she would be Lillian from now on, a name I picked at random with no special meaning, and she nodded, satisfied, her two big round eyes fixed on me as she asked what I needed her to do. I told her to help me kill zombies, crafted her a stone sword from a stick and cobblestone at the workbench, and showed her how to foot trim. And she copied me at once. To my pleasant surprise, the gold from the zombies she killed dropped straight into my account, which meant I could finally hand off the tedium of grinding and use that time for other things. The arrangement lasted all of a few minutes before Lillian stopped, blinked up at me, and announced pitifully that she was hungry. Her sweet little voice broke me a little. I asked whether she actually needed to eat, and she chirped that of course she did. Maids have hunger and thirst too. I instantly regretted everything. Can I put her back in the egg? Food was already scarce. I could barely feed one mouth, and now there were two. I dug out 2 pieces of rotten flesh and offered them, and disgust flooded her face as she declared she did not eat rotten flesh. It would poison her and kill her, then pouted like she was about to cry and asked whether her master no longer wanted her, whether he wanted her to die. I did want to stuff her back in the egg, but I said none of that out loud. I told her of course I wanted her. I just had not known maids could not eat rotten flesh, put the flesh away, and handed her my last 2 apples, which she snatched and devoured clean. What a spendthrift. I had counted on those apples to get me through the night, and instead a hungry maid had appeared at midnight to eat them. With my hunger at 4, I forced down a single piece of rotten flesh, and the taste was as foul as chewing a leather shoe, rotten and barely swallowable. I got it down and looked at the apples in her hands and nearly wept. Was it really too late to put this maid back in her egg? I wasn't going to, obviously. Compared to a few apples, Lillian was worth far more to me. The rotten flesh restored 4 points of hunger, but dropped me into the hunger status, which did nothing to my body and only made me feel ravenously hungry, the bitter rot lingering in my mouth, a sensation I would have shrugged off in a game and could barely stand now. 30 seconds later, the status cleared, my hunger holding at 7, but my thirst sat at 4 and seemed to fall faster after the rotten flesh. A 9-year veteran of this game hitting a survival problem on his very first night, the old fans would have laughed me out of the room. Drinking river water meant crafting a glass bottle first, which meant glass, which meant sand. And where was I supposed to find sand in the dark? I glanced at the zombies, now joined by a few skeletons on the fringe, and gave up the idea of charging out. With 40 health each and a full crowd of them, I would be dismembered the moment I stepped outside. So I endured, broke 2 more blocks from the floor to widen the opening for both of us, and leaned in to fight. A skeleton on the edge was firing arrows that could not reach me, plinking off the planks, and as it shuffled forward in the zombie's wake I slashed it, its health dropping to 35 out of 40, doubled like everything else here. These monsters were not smart, never retreating, always charging into the bitter end, and after a few rounds the skeleton burst into smoke, scattering bones and arrows and a green orb of experience. A message congratulated Kang Jae-yoon on the world's first skeleton kill and dropped another reward into my pack. I stopped to check it as the channel lost its mind all over again. Strangers asking whether that Kang Jae-yoon had really taken first kill on 2 monster types in one night, whether the names were a coincidence, whether this guy was a genuine monster himself, demanding to know where all the people flaming me earlier had gone, declaring that I was personally teaching the meaning of survival of the fittest. With no beds and no way to sleep, sealed in their boxes against the dark, most survivors had nothing to do but watch the channel, which made me the center of attention all night. Elsewhere, staff from the relevant departments were holed up in a mine shaft studying the night's events. They could not understand how I had killed 2 monster types in minutes, when even their own research department had no method against zombies and skeletons. One of them reported that I had ignored their friend request, and the director, Lee Sung-min, decided they should win me over and recruit me, certain that a person with no background would never refuse the honor of joining a state-owned enterprise in the National Research Department. They debated nothing about whether it was appropriate, only how to find me, because every day without a survival plan was another day of suffering for everyone. A state-owned enterprise, as if I cared. What they did not grasp was that this world had already changed everything. I was the only one who knew the recipes. I could develop on my own, and I had no interest in being anyone's subordinate. I wanted to survive, to grow slowly, and to become king. Make me Kang Jae-yoon, someone's underling? Never. I opened my pack to see the skeleton reward and found a golden yellow block, a lucky block, which delighted me because lucky blocks never appear in survival without a mod. I had assumed this world was at most vanilla survival, but if the lucky block mod was here, maybe others were too, and my mind raced through SimCity, Twilight Forest, Skyblock, equivalent exchange, and a dozen more. Every one of them a door to a world I could never have built before. I was so excited I hardly knew what to do with myself, already daydreaming about which mods to play with, when Lillian tilted her head and asked her master what was wrong. I held up the lucky block like a kid showing off a prize and asked her to guess what I had, and she answered flatly that it was a lucky block. I was surprised she knew it, and she shook her 2 golden pigtails, planted her hands on her hips, and informed me proudly that she had forgotten to mention she could not only do anything, she knew everything in this world. So she was omnipotent, I said, and she lifted her chin and agreed that this was only natural. That gave me a new worry. If other people pulled maid eggs from world rewards, would they not all become invincible too? Lillian covered her mouth and giggled, then told me she was the only maid in the whole world, that only the very first world reward hatches an omnipotent maid egg, and every reward after that is a lucky block. That put me at ease, because if everyone had a Lillian, my golden finger would be worthless, and I will admit I had no noble intentions, no wish to save the masses, only the desire to stand above all of them. I tucked the lucky block away as dawn approached, the channel still chewing over me, now buzzing that a forum had opened, that the Academy had posted a long recruitment letter for scientific researchers, which most people read instantly as the research department panicking because it could not solve the survival problem on its own. Word spread that they had tried to recruit me and I had ignored their friend request, and the crowd split, some certain I would take the honor of a state-owned post, others betting that a man who preached the strong surviving and the weak perishing would not look up to the Academy at all. I clicked into the letter, found it exactly as empty as I expected, and felt nothing. Even if they had real power and resources behind them, I had no intention of being anyone's underling. I opened my friend requests, scrolled past tens of thousands of them, and hit ignore all. Back home, I had tried everything as a streamer and stayed a nobody. Now look at me. It was almost funny. If I had owned half this much popularity in my old life, I would not have lived so miserably. I closed every interface as the sun climbed, and the zombies surrounding my house caught fire in the light, roaring as they burned down to rotten flesh and faded into the grass. I opened the door to a brighter, windier morning than yesterday. Oak leaves rustling, the sea rippling silver, little red flowers blooming with their scent on the air, a painting I had rarely gotten to see in my old polluted life. This world was not pixelated. It was as though someone had layered on the finest texture pack and shaders, and yet nothing stuttered. Perfectly smooth. Lillian followed me out and tilted her head at my contentment, remarking that her master always got happy over the strangest things, and I told her this was called enjoying life, that the joy of this game comes from each person's own understanding of it. Building, gathering, surviving, adventuring, or simply taking in the view. Time to work. My thirst had already fallen to 2 segments, and if it kept up, I would soon be done for. I grabbed the rotten flesh by the house and my stone shovel and headed for the river with Lillian trailing me, since sand spawns near water. I dug half a stack of sand and dragged my heavy feet back, thirst down to 1.5, no running left in me, only a slow walk, which confirmed that rotten flesh sped up the drain. I fed charcoal into the furnace, set the sand to smelt into glass, and the moment it was done I crafted glass bottles, 3 glass to 3 bottles, arranged in a simple V on the workbench, until I had 6. By then my thirst was a single bar, my head swimming, and I staggered to the river, filled a bottle, and drank it down in one pull. The water was sweet and clean, maybe only because I had been so thirsty, and I gulped a second and kept going until my thirst was full again. This is too real. Lillian came over watching me with hope in her eyes, and I handed her a bottle so she could drink at the river the way I had, because maids run on hunger and thirst like anyone else, which meant I was supporting 2 mouths now, and a man supporting a family simply has to work harder. I filled all 6 bottles and gave her 3, so we would not have to return to the river every time we got thirsty. Water was solved, food was next. I could chew rotten flesh, but Lillian could not, so I needed something else for her. I packed up the furnace and workbench, left the temporary house behind, and headed for the oak forest, hoping to find a sheep and maybe enough wool for a bed. As I walked, I spotted a white sheep grazing, head down, and crept up with my stone sword drawn, Lillian tiptoeing curiously behind me in imitation. I lunged and struck, dropping its health to 3 out of 8, the animal's unchanged here, and when it bolted I chased it down and finished it with a second blow. It dropped 1 wool and 2 pieces of mutton, and I grabbed the mutton eagerly, because wool could wait and food could not. I waved the mutton at Lillian and told her she had food for today, and she asked, a little surprised, whether her master could hunt too. I grinned and told her I could do anything. She plainly did not believe me and listed off her own talents, every crafting recipe in the world, hunting, killing monsters, the locations of all the treasures, everything, calling herself the omniscient maid of this world and asking how her master could possibly know more than she did. So I asked her seriously whether she knew redstone technology. She startled, then admitted she knew redstone but did not see what it was good for besides torches. I tapped her little head and told her that her knowledge was limited, that I would show her one day what a redstone powerhouse looked like, and walked off into the forest while she trailed me, pouting and protesting that an omniscient maid could not possibly have limited knowledge, demanding I explain redstone technology before I went anywhere, calling for me to wait. The omniscient maid only knows the rules and recipes of this world. That was the thing she did not understand. The game is not just its recipes, it is everything players build on top of and beyond them. 12 years of invention by countless people, knowledge no maid could ever match, no matter how omniscient she claimed to be. As we walked, I ate a piece of rotten flesh to hold off hunger and dropped the 2 cuts of mutton into the furnace to roast, and a rich smell of cooking meat rolled out across the entire plain. I stood by the furnace getting greedy over the smell, Lillian watching the meat with starry puppy-hungry eyes, and I thought of the apple and knew this roast mutton would be just as good. What I did not realize was that the smell was carrying, and a group of people downwind caught it, marveling at the scent of roasted meat, sick of eating apples, and started walking straight toward us, one of them taking a screenshot and dumping it into the World Channel asking everyone what they made of a guy out here eating roast meat. The channel exploded over that screenshot. Strangers demanded to know what was going on, melted down that they had only ever found raw meat to choke on, asked what he was cooking the meat with, identified the furnace from a village they had seen, accused him of stealing it, argued over whether the real point was the furnace or the roast meat, and finally goaded the guy who took the screenshot to go ask me for the method. The few people nearby decided to do exactly that and walked up to me just as the meat finished. I pulled the fragrant roast lamb from the furnace, its smell filling my head, my own mouth watering, while 5 hungry strangers, satiety down to 3 or 4 bars after a starving night, stared at the meat and swallowed hard, asking whether that was roast meat in my hand and whether they could try some. They would not even meet my eyes, all their attention on the lamb, so I frowned and put it away and refused them flatly, as if I would. This lamb was for Lillian. I was not even eating it myself, and I was certainly not handing it to strangers. They realized at once they had said the wrong thing, since food was the scarcest thing alive right now. And as I packed the furnace to leave with Lillian, they got anxious and crowded in to stop me, swearing they did not want my meat. They only wanted to know where I got the furnace, that we were all on the same side, fresh arrivals, that maybe we could help each other someday. Their kindness softened me a little, and I hesitated, then told them this was a furnace and I had made it myself. That word, myself, broke their brains. They balked, asked what I said, refused to believe it, told me I did not have to lie just because I would not share, pointed out that the furnace's structure was clearly complex, that it was meaningless to make up such a story. So when I tell the truth, you call it a lie. Lillian, listening, grew displeased and snapped that her master had made it, that it was nothing very difficult, and only then did the 5 of them notice the extremely beautiful girl standing beside me. 4 of them were men, and the moment they took in her golden hair and her maid outfit, their eyes glazed over. This world copied the game faithfully but did not turn people into blocks. Everyone's appearance was modeled on their real self, so good-looking people stayed good-looking and ugly people stayed ugly, which made Lillian, with her long golden hair, her huge round eyes, and her flawless features, stand out like nothing else in this world. They stammered that they had not meant anything, that the furnace was simply so ingenious they could not believe it, that of course they believed me now, anything to keep her attention. So a lie from me, but the truth from her. These face-worshipping fools. Lillian's expression did not soften an inch at their flattery, and she told them coldly that her master had no time to teach them and to get out of the way, and they reeled, looking from her beauty to my ordinary face, unable to work out how a girl like that could call a man like me master. A parade of shameful fantasies clearly ran through their heads, regret and longing all over their faces, that such a beautiful girl had ended up with such a man. Their expressions hardened, and they turned a new kind of friendly on me, the kind that wants something, telling me they only wanted to get to know me, that everyone was confused in this new world and survival was hard, that we should be friends and maybe help each other someday, maybe even steal my wife someday. I could read it on them. I grinned right back. The eyeglasses man among them put out a hand and introduced himself as Ha Tae-sung, asking my name, and I, unafraid of whatever he thought he was declaring, shook it and told him my name was Kang Jae-hyun and that it was a pleasure. The moment I said it, every one of them froze. Kang Jae-hyun. The name was suddenly terribly familiar. Wasn't this the man who had claimed 2 world-first kills overnight and gotten himself recruited by the state council? Ha Tae-sung stood frozen, asking in disbelief whether I was really that Kang Jae-hyun, and I rolled my eyes and asked whether there was a problem. His face changed instantly and he shook his head. No, of course not. No problem at all. They had run straight into a big shot and aimed their attitude right at his face. The most famous man in the entire virtual world, the one who had killed the zombie and the skeleton on the first night. The 2 monsters that had given the whole world nightmares, and they had been disrespectful and even eyed his girl. 10 lives would not be enough to spend if I decided to take them. Ha Tae-sung bowed 90 degrees and apologized for himself and for offending me and my sister-in-law, which left me bewildered, because a minute ago he had looked ready to kill me. I waved it off, told him an apology was not necessary, that I had things to do and they should leave if they had nothing else, and pulled Lillian to go. But he stopped me again, asking if I would be merciful and tell them how the furnace was made, and I reminded him I had just said I made it, that teaching was too much trouble, that I had other things to do today. It was not stubbornness exactly. The furnace itself is simple, but I could not explain it without first explaining the workbench and the crafting table, and from there every other recipe. An endless thread, and I had no patience to unspool all of that for a stranger. My stiffness annoyed a fat man among them, who told Ha Tae-sung to stop, insisting I clearly did not know and was only pretending, that the furnace was probably looted from a village. The others piled on, doubting that anyone could have made a furnace in a single day, saying the craftsmanship was too fine, demanding to know why I would be so secretive over a mere furnace. Their tone sharpened because they knew little about me and saw no reason for respect. 2 unexplained world-first kills were impressive but not enough to make them grovel, and they had never actually watched me kill anything, so they wrote it off as luck. Blue Star had raised them on the idea that all people are equal, and they took survival of the fittest as bluster, most of them still believing this was the old world where everyone stood on level ground, not yet realizing that the rule I had spoken would become the law by which humanity lived. Ha Tae-sung had already realized it though. He had agreed with me from the start and shown it in his actions. And everything, the 2 first kills, the roast meat, the furnace, told him I was extraordinary, that I had integrated into this world far faster than anyone else, that this was not an experience to endure but a place we would live for the rest of our lives, and that the sooner a person adapted, the more they would gain. He told the others to shut up, that if I did not want to explain, they should not force me, and they should simply leave. The fat man only grew angrier, sneering that Ha Tae-sung was already calling me by name, that he had not realized what a bootlicker the man was, that he was disgusted by him. The others said maybe I was not even Kang Jae-yoon, that they had come amicably and been met with attitude, that they would not just leave. Ha Tae-sung snapped at the fat man to shut his mouth, because whatever else happened, he would not make an enemy of me. But the fat man had no such sense, planting himself in place and declaring that it was just a furnace recipe, that if I knew it, I ought to publish it, that 900 million people worldwide were starving and I could not hoard it all to myself. That was the line that finally got under my skin. My temper has always been even, and I will not blow up unless I am pushed. But that pushed me. My crafting table, my method. Why should I publish anything? If I chose to share, that was kindness, and if I chose not to, no one had the right to fault me for it. Lillian felt the shift in me at once, her eyes darkening as she pulled her stone sword and flickered to the fat man's side like a ghost, driving the blade toward his chest. He screamed and crumpled, clutching at himself and writhing. Because this was not a game, this was a real world, and pain was as real as anything in it. Lillian, cold-faced, set 1 foot on his body and pressed the sword to his neck, telling him that one more word and she would send him to his death, her golden hair flying in a sudden wind. The fat man, frightened of the blade but still defiant, raged that she had dared to hurt him, that he would call the police, that she would go to jail, and Lillian answered grimly that there were no police in this world and killing was allowed, that he had already made her master unhappy and deserved to die. He mustered the courage to shout that he would report her stabbed to the state council, and that she would never escape it. I walked up from behind with an indifferent face. I told him 3 things. First, there is no law in this world, so if I kill you, Lillian faces no charges. Second, I am the Kang Jae-hyun the state council could not recruit, the man who holds survival knowledge no one else has. While you are merely a waste, and it is obvious which of us the state council would choose. I set my foot on his face and looked down at him with contempt. Third, this is no longer the old world. This world follows the law of the jungle, where the strong devour the weak, and the moment I decide you should die, you will die right now. My overbearing tone scared the fat man stiff, and for a moment he did not dare speak. But he recovered fast and sneered that I must be crazy to think I could kill him, that I imagined I could lord over everyone just because I had changed worlds and grabbed 2 first kills, that he was staying right here and would like to see whether I had the nerve. He glared up at me with all the ferocity he could find. I frowned slightly, and the next second his head and body parted ways. Lillian's speed was so far beyond anyone there that no one even registered the strike, and the fat man's head lay separate from his body on the grass, blood running from the severed neck. The other 4 turned white and shrieked that it was murder, scrambling back from Lillian, trembling at this beautiful woman who had butchered a man without a flinch. Her face had not changed at all. She calmly wiped the blade on the fat man's clothes, checked it was clean, kicked his corpse aside and tucked the sword away as if the killing had been someone else's doing. The girl among the 5 finally broke, clutching her head and screaming that Lillian was a monster, then ran sobbing toward the distant oak forest, unable to stand a place where eating and sleeping were already impossible, and now she had watched a friend murdered in front of her. The others, their greed curdled into fear, stumbled backward stammering that we would not leave unharmed, that a life demanded a life, blood for blood, then scattered in every direction. Only Ha Tae-sung stayed where he stood. I watched him a long while, my expression cooling, and asked whether he was not afraid I would kill him too. He admitted he was. Of course he was, and edged back 2 steps, his eyes full of wariness. He told me he had spent the night wondering what kind of man Kang Jae-hyun was to take first kill on the zombie and the skeleton, imagining a dozen times it was just luck. A low-health monster finished off with a single click. Now he understood the 2 monsters announced in the channel had not been the only ones to die that night, and that with combat like Lillian's, it was never the killers who suffered. He kept his distance, lest Lillian decide he was next, and said he had only been curious what sort of person I was. I had no mood to humor him, still backing away but with no fear left in his face. He said he had always thought my line about survival of the fittest was the golden rule of this world, and had not expected me to live up to it so completely. This one understands faster than the rest. He said he believed this world was no longer like the one we came from, that the only people who would survive here were the ones better adapted to its rules, which was exactly what I thought. His feet stopped about 7 blocks from me, and he looked up, his gaze gone deadly serious, and apologized on behalf of the others for offending me, then said he hoped that the next time we met, we would not be enemies. With that he turned and left, and only the fat man's corpse, Lillian, and I remained. The instant the others were gone, Lillian melted back into her soft self, asking pitifully whether killing him would be a problem. Her mouth pouted to the sky in worry, nothing at all like the woman who had just taken a head off. It was equal parts amusing and exasperating. I asked why she had to kill him, whether scaring him would not have been enough, and she pouted that she had killed him because she felt her master wanted to, that she had not held back. That stopped me, and I asked what she meant. She seemed surprised I did not know, and explained that she and I shared a mental contract, that as my maid, she could fully sense my joys and angers and sorrows, and that a moment ago she had sensed I truly wanted the fat man dead. So she had not hesitated, and now she was afraid she had done something wrong. I stopped tidying the corpse, and told her she had done nothing wrong, that I really had wanted him dead. I had meant to tell her that human life is precious, and killing is against morality, but looking at her wounded face I swallowed it, because we were not on Blue Star, and this world runs on the law of the jungle, where the strong stand at the top of the food chain. The fault was not hers but all of humanity's, for failing to adapt, and she had done for me the very thing I most wanted done. I told her that as long as I was here no one in this world could capture or punish her, and asked only that next time, before she killed, she looked to me first and act if I nodded. I said it calmly, because a man bound for the top cannot let the notions of his old society tie his hands. While I was still inside my own thoughts, Lillian leaned in again and asked what sister-in-law meant, since Ha Tae-sung had called me by name and called her sister-in-law, and she wondered whether that was her new name. My whole body stiffened. Her question was the last thing I expected, and I covered for myself by busying my hands, digging a 2x2 hole and dropping the fat man's body in before sealing the top with dirt. The simplest way to dispose of a corpse, since humans here do not vanish when killed the way monsters do, leaving their bodies behind even as their packs spill to the ground. Then I cleared my throat twice and told her, awkwardly, that sister-in-law just meant a very beautiful girl, a respectful way of addressing her, and that she should simply take it as that. Ha Tae-sung had assumed Lillian was from our world and was my girlfriend, and I was too lazy to correct the misunderstanding, since it made no difference. I handed her the roasted mutton from my pack and watched her eat, saving the other piece for her, since I would not be eating it myself, the smell tempting as it was, because food was scarce and rotten flesh was good enough for me. We walked on toward the plains, and behind us the forum was filling with posts about me. One announced that the survival problem was solved, that raw meat could become roast meat, that Kang Jae-hyun had invented roasting equipment called a furnace, with pictures of me holding the meat and of the furnace itself, and more than 70,000 replies underneath. People marveled that they had tried everything to cook raw meat and failed, asked whether the furnace really came from me, doubted it outright, described their own futile attempts to make fire by rubbing sticks against indestructible blocks, asked how the furnace was even made and what it was made of, and circled back again and again to disbelief, most of them deciding I had simply looted it from a village, because they all knew by now that blocks could not be broken, that cobblestone vanished when dug by hand, and so could not imagine how anyone had built a furnace from it, if only they knew how simple it actually is. 2 other posts ran nearly as hot, one about my girlfriend Lillian and one about me killing a man. The killing post drew a crowd of the outraged people who had liked me until they heard I had murdered someone, and declared there were no laws and no one could control me, demanding to know whether anyone would do something, warning that if I went unchecked I would turn the world upside down. The Lillian post drew a different crowd, people stunned by her beauty, swearing no Blue Star celebrity could compare, weeping with envy that a plain-looking man like me had found a girl like that. I let none of it touch me. As for the killing, I did not believe anyone would truly dare to cross me, and if someone came to crush me with Blue Star's old laws, I would not go soft. Lillian was my maid, and I would protect her to the end. I closed the forum and wandered the plains with her until a small village came into view, which delighted me, since villages were common on the plains and stumbling onto one was easy. The only difference from the villages I knew was that the moment we approached, 3 or 4 villagers came at us holding stone hoes, snarling that another thief had come to steal, telling us to get out or be beaten, that they had no spare food and would give none, calling us beggars who only wanted to steal instead of work. They looked ready to swing, which startled me. But before I could explain, Lillian pulled my stone sword and stepped in front of me, her sweet face gone cold and empty, and warned them that one more word and they would all die. Her boldness left me staring, because these villagers all carried stone hoes, which deal damage not far from a stone sword, and there were 4 of them against her 1, so for once she would be at a disadvantage. I moved up to stop her, and then watched the 4 villagers drop their tools and bow their heads in respect, apologizing to the lady maid, saying they had not recognized her standing behind me. What in the world? I looked from the villagers to Lillian and back, completely lost, because a moment ago they would not tolerate a stranger, and now they were bowing and apologizing. Lillian's face stayed indifferent while the 4 kept apologizing, and one of them ran for a house to call someone. Neither of us spoke. The other 3 kept their heads down, faces full of panic as though they had committed some terrible crime. Before long, an old man came out leaning on a cane, panting and hurrying, deeply agitated, and the moment he saw Lillian his eyes welled with tears as he cried out that the Lord Maid had appeared, that they had feared they would never see her again in this lifetime. I watched, bewildered, and just as I started to ask, Lillian stepped back so they could all see me and told them this was her master. That set the villagers off again, more agitated than before, gasping that this was the Lord Maid's master, several of them bowing low, apologizing for their offense, swearing they had not known, hoping I would not hold it against them, asking my name and how to address me. I raised my eyebrows and told them my name was Kang Jae-hyun, and they answered at once that it was Lord Kang, begging forgiveness for their disrespect, then pressed and shoved us inside, insisting we not talk out in the open. Please come in. So I walked into the village a little dazed. The villagers were warm, pouring tea and bringing out bread and baked potato to fill our stomachs, and I did not stand on ceremony, just grabbed the bread and ate, desperate for something that was not rotten flesh after a full day of it. The bread surprised me, soft and threaded with a sweet milky aroma and even a faint salt under it, richer in layers than any bread I had eaten before. As expected, the food here ran circles around the food back home. One loaf pulled my satiety up to 8 bars, and I followed it with the baked potato, which carried an indescribable charred aroma over a soft, sticky sweet interior that completely overturned everything I thought about potatoes, since I had never even liked potatoes, and now found myself in love with the thing. After the potato, my satiety was full, and I drank the tea until my thirst was full too, and only then stopped. With eating and drinking settled, I asked Lillian why the villagers called her Lord Maid. She bit gently into her bread and explained that, about 10 years ago, before she entered the maid egg, there had been a great zombie invasion, and she alone had held off all of them, and saved a great many villagers, so villagers everywhere knew her, and called her Lord Maid. She told it calmly, not thinking of herself as a savior at all. Surprised she had such a past, I asked how a single person held off all those zombies, but she only smiled and waved it off as long ago, so I let it drop, content that her reputation got us safely inside. Behind that soft face is something I haven't seen yet. I turned to the old man and asked whether he was the village chief, and he answered respectfully that he was, with no trace of looking down on me. I told him I had come to borrow some potato seeds and carrot seeds, that I would return them once I started planting, and I asked it courteously because although I had originally meant to simply rob the villagers, finding them to be Lillian's old friends had changed my mind, though if they refused, I would still have plundered. The chief rose from his seat in excitement and insisted there was no need to return anything, that it was their honor to help Lord Kang and the Lord Maid, and called for someone to fetch the seeds. A villager soon brought 10 carrots and 10 potatoes, and the chief frowned at the small pile and asked whether there was more, told them to bring everything in the warehouse, and when the villagers said that was all of it, a sorrow crossed his eyes. He sighed and apologized that the harvest had been poor and food was tight, that this was all they had for now. I told him it was more than enough, and took the carrots and potatoes, startled that so small a village was so short of food, when only moments ago I had been thinking of robbing them. If I had taken all of it, many of these villagers would have starved. He waved his hands in a panic and called it their honor again, and I told him seriously that I would repay it doubly someday. It was a real promise. Solving my own food problem would have been easy, planting wheat or hunting animals, but I did not want food to be my top priority while I needed to take root in this world, and moving around to hunt or farm burned so much satiety it was hard to stay ahead of the drain. Coming straight to the village for carrots and potatoes was simply more efficient, and I could develop a real food source slowly. I pocketed the potatoes and told the chief we had other things to do and would not trouble them further, and when he asked us to stay longer, I waved it off, thanked him for the potatoes, and turned to go with Lillian behind me. The chief watched us walk away and smiled to himself that this time, the Lord Maid had followed a good person. Out of the village, Lillian's face returned to soft and lovely, and I told her, a little helpless, that she only behaved when there were outsiders around. She said sweetly that some things were only for her master to see, her 2 golden braids swaying, and my face went hot, because in our world that was exactly how a person flirts. I decided not to tell her that and just laughed it off, then led her back the way we had come to find a spot near water. Not far from the village was a puddle with an oak forest beside it, plains, forest, and a water source all in one place, and I settled on it as our temporary home. Not a house yet, just somewhere to stay, since I did not like crowds and would not live in the village while I had so much to do. I dug a 1x2 opening with my stone shovel and kept going downward, and when Lillian asked what I was doing, I told her, without looking back, that I was building a house. She wanted to know why I was digging underground, and I explained that with so many people arriving from our world, anything on the surface was easily stolen, so we would live below. She frowned and said that if anyone dared to take our things, she would kill them, and I told her that girls should not always talk about killing, and to come help me instead. Together we hollowed out a 12 by 12 by 4 space under the dirt, small but enough for two, easy to expand sideways later, and I replaced the top layer of dirt with cobblestone out of an old habit, because mismatched layers, stone under dirt, always looked uncomfortable to me. I set the furnace and crafting table in a corner, crafted wooden sticks from planks, arranged them into an H to make ladders, and set the ladders against the wall by the entrance so we could climb in and out. I filled in one block of the opening to make it a tidy 1 by 1, then realized we needed a door, and since we were underground a normal wooden door would not fit. Only a trapdoor, which I made from 6 oak wood planks, a wooden door being 2 blocks tall while a trapdoor is 1, exactly the right size for our entrance. I installed it and climbed out. With sleeping arrangements handled, food was next, but without iron ore I could not make an iron bucket, and without a bucket I could not choose a planting spot freely, so I had to plant by the river. I tilled the water line with my stone hoe and planted 5 potatoes and 5 carrots, saving the other 5 of each for dinner, since I had worked non-stop and my hunger had already fallen 3 segments. A man supporting a family has to work harder, even underground. I ate some rotten flesh and handed all 5 carrots to Lillian, telling her to eat them first and that I would roast the potatoes for her dinner, and she munched them down obediently. I wanted to taste a carrot myself, but with the field's growth uncertain I would not let her go hungry, so I stuck to rotten flesh. A normal person who does not move much loses only 4 or 5 hunger points a day, easily covered by a few apples, and sealed in a box at night might lose just 1 or 2, but someone working as hard as me could burn through more than 30 baked potatoes in a day. After planting, I gathered weeds nearby, which vanish at a touch, and sometimes drop wheat seeds, since wheat crafts straight into bread, a staple food source. I worked a long while for only 15 seeds and another 2 segments of hunger, sighed, and planted all 15 by the river. I patted Lillian, who was chewing a carrot, and told her we were heading back, and she looked at the planted vegetables and asked whether I was not afraid they would be stolen if we just left them. I told her tiredly that the spot was secluded enough that probably no one would come, and that even if someone did, we could not exactly stand guard over a vegetable patch. She finished her carrot, thought it over, and decided it made sense, since I always had so much to do and she had to help me everywhere, and with the harvest time unknown, guarding the field would only waste our labor. She let it go and followed me home. Back inside, I burned an oak log into 12 charcoal, set 5 pieces at the bottom of the furnace, and put the potatoes into roast, because raw potatoes restore only 1 hunger point while baked ones restore 3, so they must be eaten baked to be worth anything. Then I opened a mine shaft in the corner of the house. I had been in this world a long time and still had not gone mining once, and now I was finally ready to start. After digging a 4x4 pit, I went to the workbench and crafted my remaining 7 pieces of coal into torches. 1 stick and 1 coal making 4 torches. So 7 coal gave me 28, and with the 4 already in my pack I had 32. Not many, but enough for 1 trip. I made a few extra stone pickaxes so I would not run out mid-dig, packed torches and rotten flesh in water, and started down the shaft in my old step-like staircase style, neat and orderly the way I always mined. 5 or 6 layers down I hit a coal seam, and even though coal is common, this was the first ore I had dug since arriving, and any player knows the joy of that first vein is hard to contain. The seam was large and gave about 10 coal, and once I had it all, my old compulsion kicked in, and I filled every uneven gap in the walls with cobblestone until the shaft was clean again, then dug on. A few layers more and I found coal again, calmer this time, dug it out, and patched the walls. I was on layer 41, and the best depth for mining is layer 11, where diamond ore is most likely, so I plan to drive straight down to 11 before branching sideways. On the way I spotted 3 redstone arranged neatly in the wall, and my eyes nearly sparkled, because most minerals here are limited, but redstone has no ceiling, and with redstone any miracle is possible. Unfortunately I had no iron pickaxe yet, so I could not mine it since I first had to find iron, smelt iron ingots, craft an iron pickaxe, and only then take the redstone. I sighed, still at layer 24, a way to go, and kept swinging. I had found coal and redstone, but not a single piece of iron, and I muttered that my bad luck had not changed. 3 stone pickaxes already broken. I did not complain much, just grumbled and dug on. And finally, 5 or 6 blocks later, 3 connected iron ore veins appeared. I rushed forward, thrilled that I could finally enter the Iron Age, and 3 pieces of iron dropped into my pack, with several more beneath them that surfaced as I cleared the top layer. 7 pieces of iron in all. With enough iron in hand, I lost the urge to keep going, since mining is tiring, boring work I did not want to drag out. So I tucked the iron away and climbed back up the shaft, hungered down to 5, ate 2 pieces of rotten flesh, drained all 3 bottles of water, and climbed out happy. The first thing I saw was Lillian rummaging around the house, and when I asked what she was doing, she said sweetly that she was decorating the room, and that was when I noticed the 2 small red beds behind her. It surprised me, and I walked over and sat on one, since I had only ever played the game and never known what a bed felt like, and found it quite soft. I asked where they came from, since we had only had one piece of wool, and that wool was still on me. And Lillian smoothed the sheet and said I had told her this place was our home now, so a home should look like a home, and that she had dug a stack of dirt and traded it to a wandering merchant. A wandering merchant? In 9 years of this game I had never heard of one. Lillian got excited that there was something her master did not know, pulled me down to sit, and explained eagerly that wandering merchants are a profession in this world, a kind of worker you can barter with, no different in principle from villagers, except that village goods tend to be unreasonable while a wandering merchant carries the daily things people need, and each one stocks only one category, a food seller carrying only food, a materials seller only building materials. It sounded like the street vendors back home, and I nodded thoughtfully, which only delighted her more. She had been a maid before, she said, but her old masters were so foolish she had to teach them everything. While I had never asked her a foolish question, never made her do dirty work, and was considerate of her every day, so the rare chance to explain something to me made her unusually happy. I had no idea where her excitement came from and figured she was just in a good mood. She added that sometimes a wandering merchant would even build a house and sell goods from inside a proper shop, which was nothing like the game I knew, another reminder of how much I still did not understand here. I asked how many resources the 2 beds had cost, and she thought and said about 2 stacks of dirt, that wandering merchants trading beds for dirt were rare, and that the price had been such a fine she had asked the merchant to wait while she dug the dirt. Of course, that had everything to do with her looks, since no wandering merchant waits around for someone to dig 2 stacks of dirt, but the silly girl had not realized it. She reasoned aloud that 2 beds were worth more than 2 stacks of dirt, so the merchant probably raised sheep and grew trees himself, or the deal would not have been so cheap. She is far more useful than she knows, and far too honest about her own worth. Listening to her ramble, I pieced something together. Apart from monsters, the creatures here probably do not spawn at random, but breed slowly, or are domesticated, which explained why I had found so few animals on the plains. Villagers and wandering merchants were not spawned either, but a population truly living here, rising early and returning late, eating and sleeping, which meant trade and commerce had to exist, giving rise to the wandering merchant profession. They were nothing like the fixed trading non-player characters of the game, since everything they sold they had to source, raise, and craft themselves. For the first time I felt this was a real world. I decided to go find one, not to buy anything, since anything they sold I could make myself, but to understand how their trades worked. On the other side of the plains, Ha-Tae-sung had just parted from me with his thoughts in a muddle when his 3 friends caught up. They insisted they had to report the killing to the state council, that they could not let the fat man die for nothing, that the woman was terrifying, taking off his head, that letting her go would only mean more victims later. The more they talked, the angrier they got, having watched the fat man die with their own eyes. But Ha-Tae-sung did not want any part of it, and asked whether they really thought the state council would care. The only girl wiped her tears and asked what he meant, and he answered calmly that this was no longer the world they had lived in, that this world had not even a shred of social rules, let alone a legal system, and that killing was not against the law here. She stared at him in disbelief, unable to accept that the man who had watched the fat man die could say such a thing, crying out that the fat man was dead, that he had been their friend, and Ha-Tae-sung said coldly that the man had brought it on himself. She backed away in tears and told him he had changed, that he used to protect them and now he was a coward afraid of me, and said she never wanted to see him again before running off. The 2 boys asked whether he really felt that way, and Ha-Tae-sung nodded and said he did not care what they did, but he would not offend me. They said they understood, told him to take care, and drifted off after the girl. Ha-Tae-sung let out a long sigh, because in truth, he had wanted nothing more to do with the group from the start. In the old world, he could afford to protect them, but the rules here were different, and the only thing that mattered now was survival. His hunger had dropped to 5 bars, so he set off to cut trees for apples, and had not walked far when he came upon a small 4x6 house of oakwood planks with a window cut into the front, shaped a little like a newsstand. Inside stood a full-bearded man in a brown leather jacket, past 40, who barely lifted his drooping eyelids when Ha-Tae-sung politely asked what the place was, then went back to dozing with his chin in his hand and said he sold furnaces. 1 stack of cobblestone each. The word furnace stunned and thrilled Ha-Tae-sung, because it might be the very kind I used, the kind that roasted raw meat into cooked, which meant he could finally eat meat. He asked cautiously whether it could do that, and the merchant waved him off impatiently, asking what other kind there was, telling him to buy or leave. Ha-Tae-sung wanted nothing more than to say yes, but where would he find a whole stack of cobblestone when he did not even know how to collect stone, having watched the rock vanish every time he dug it by hand? He thought of me, of the furnace and stone sword I carried, wondering whether I had traded for them, and if so, how I had gathered the cobblestone. While he puzzled over it, the forum filled with people envying those who had met wandering merchants, one complaining his merchant sold emeralds instead of food, others debating whether a stack of dirt for 1 bread was worth the satiety it cost, someone declaring the new law of survival was simply to move as little as possible. Ha Taesung realized wandering merchants were common, which meant he did not need to post about his own, since the merchants sold furnaces and announcing it would only get me cursed again. Scrolling down, he found someone already had a post claiming the furnace's source was exposed, that it had not been made by me but bought from a wandering merchant. The crowd ate it up, certain now that I could never have made a furnace, accusing me of going crazy trying to show off, demanding to know why I had lied instead of admitting I traded for it. Though a few still asked the obvious question of how anyone gathered the stack of cobblestone the trade required when rocks vanish on digging. Whether my words were true or false hardly mattered to them. They had come to this world discontent and in pain, and seeing someone like me living well, they simply needed something to vent at. People always need someone to hate. In the research department, the eyeglasses man in a blue shirt pointed out that with the wandering merchant exposed, the furnace surely could not have been mine, and asked whether the director still wanted to recruit me. The director, Lee Sung-min, looked over the forum with a calm face and asked the eyeglasses man whether, if they did not recruit me, he could produce survival methods himself. The eyeglasses man lowered his head and apologized that he was not skilled enough. Lee Sung-min said that whether or not I had made the furnace, my actions spoke for themselves. On the first night, I had obtained a stone sword and killed zombies and skeletons for rewards no one could account for. Even if I had traded for the furnace, a trade with a wandering merchant starts at a full stack, 64 items, an enormous amount of satiety to mine, so I clearly had a food source no one else did. And to this day, no one but me had found a way to collect cobblestone. Did the eyeglasses man really think I was unworthy of recruitment? Lee Seung-min closed the forum and declared they had to recruit me. The eyeglasses man pointed out that I ignored them, and Lee Seung-min said the answer was to give me enough face, that the first order had been a public notice, so it was no wonder I had not come, and that an order naming me specifically on the forum would not let me sit still. The eyeglasses man said it was not good to recruit me this way, but Lee Seung-min said you cannot catch a wolf without sacrificing a cub, and that was exactly what they would do. Unable to talk him out of it, the eyeglasses man let him have his way. And about half a day later, Lee Sung-min uploaded the order to the forum. The forum stirred at once, people asking what was going on, whether I had snubbed the first recruitment so they were now recruiting me publicly, laughing that the arrogant one was suddenly the anxious one, taunting the people who had bet I would surely accept, marveling that someone really did not want to join, declaring they loved my personality. Others were disgusted that a man who had killed someone was being courted anyway, with the killing ignored, and the debate over law swung back around, some insisting this world had no social system and therefore no laws to break. Others agreeing with my survival of the fittest view while still disliking me. Others reading every line of the recruitment letter as pure arrogance, as if my coming would be the honor, and others betting all over again on whether I would accept this time. As the order spread, my message window would not stop vibrating, the forum never going quiet all day, until I opened it in pure irritation. "Are you recruiting your dad?" That was the comment I typed and sent. I had not wanted to deal with any of it, but the endless vibrating drove me to it. Everyone still arguing burst out laughing when they saw it, gleeful that I was so aggressive, noting that they treated recruitment as an honor while I plainly did not, that I did not take it seriously at all, that they loved this true character of mine over the keyboard warriors who say one thing and do another. My comment shot to the top of the homepage with countless likes, since I was the first person to dare push back, and most of them were only there to watch the show and did not care how big it got. Lee Sung-min's face went as dark as the bottom of an old pot. He fumed that recruiting me was a blessing I had earned over 8 lifetimes, and that I was this ungrateful. The eyeglasses man tried to soothe him, saying the department did not lack me, and Lee Sung-min rounded on him, asking whether the eyeglasses man had researched anything at all about the virtual world. When the man only stammered, Lee Sung-min roared at him to get out, called the lot of them good-for-nothings, kicked him out of the Oak Forest house, and stood there flipping through the comments with his face going darker and darker. On my end, I closed the forum and came back with Lillian from a wandering merchant I had just visited, one who traded emeralds for building resources. I had chatted with him a few minutes and learned that he kept regular hours, standing in place from sunrise to sunset, with very reasonable prices, so if I ever needed resources I could buy from him and save a great deal of time. The sun was sinking toward dark, the wind picking up in the oak forest, the cicadas growing louder, and I took out the lucky block to open it. To avoid getting something bad at home, I set it down here, a safe distance from the house, took a breath, and gave it a gentle tap. The block burst with a sharp crack, and a piece of paper fell to the ground. Paper of all things. I walked over and picked it up, and it was not the paper from the game. This one could be unfolded and had writing inside. What looked like a 20 by 20 land deed. I had no idea what it was, and Lillian came over surprised, took it and turned it over several times, delighted, telling me a land deed was rare, and that my luck was truly good. I asked what was special about it, and she pulled my hand and led me toward home, explaining that I used to worry about things on a surface house being stolen, and that I would not have to worry anymore, because as long as I held this deed, no one else could destroy anything inside its 20 by 20 grid. It worked like owning a server then. People could enter and survive inside the claim, but only the owner could break the building blocks within it, which meant I could finally build on the surface. I nodded, calling it a good thing, and was about to put it away when another problem struck me, that the item was excellent but 20 by 20 was tiny, hardly enough for a single house. Lillian told me not to worry, that since I had gold coins I could expand the size of the claim once I had enough of them. That eased me, since a fixed 20 by 20 would have been far too small, and I asked how many coins an expansion would take. She thought and said that if she remembered right, expanding a single 1 by 1 grid took 10,000 gold coins. 10,000 gold coins for 1 square meter. A zombie gave only 5 gold, and I had 30 to my name, so reaching 10,000 would take forever. Even housing prices in this world were a ripoff. We talked the whole way back and reached home near dark, the wheat and potatoes a day grown and just sprouting, still far from ripe, so I admitted the food problem was still hard to solve, smiled, and took the 7 smelted iron ingots from the furnace. I used 3 to craft an iron bucket, fetched a bucket of water from the river, filled 6 empty bottles, and gave Lillian 3, since going out at night was too dangerous and water had to be prepared ahead. We returned inside and shut the trap door, and although a surface house and an underground one were no different in safety, the latter was a nuisance, so now that I had the deed I no longer needed to live underground and planned to build a house above this basement soon, keeping the current room as a cellar. I did not want to move the mine shaft after a full day of digging down to layer 11. I made a small chest and set it by the bed, cleared the clutter off myself, and counted 4 iron left after the bucket, not enough to truly enter the Iron Age, iron still being scarce, so I would use it sparingly. I crafted an iron pickaxe from 3 ingots and packed it, since I planned to keep mining tonight, and without an iron pickaxe, redstone, diamonds, emeralds, and lapis lazuli all stayed out of reach. I carried a crafting table along and gave Lillian all the baked potatoes, since digging dirt all day had drained her hunger and the carrots were gone, leaving baked potatoes for her dinner. With everything ready, I took her down the shaft. The shaft went smoothly and I walked down from the top, setting a torch every 7 layers, my compulsion on full display from top to bottom, though it did look pleasing. I raised the iron pickaxe, mined the redstone I had seen before, and filled the gap with cobblestone, and Lillian, watching my clean, efficient movements, said with some surprise that I actually knew redstone needed an iron pickaxe. I told her it was common sense, and she rolled her eyes and said it was nothing of the kind, that the people who came with me did not know anything, could not even collect cobblestone, let alone crafting tables and the rest. I laughed awkwardly and said nothing, and she looked at me with a probing expression and announced that I was particularly strange. I asked what was strange about me, and she thought and said I was particularly smart and knew so much that there was nothing left for her to do. I told her that a man who could obtain the world's only full-time maid could not be too bad, and she conceded that this was true. She still has no idea just how strange I really am. We reached the end of layer 11, and I told her to mine the left while I took the right for speed, and the minerals on layer 11 were far richer than the upper layers. 2 iron ores and 3 redstone after only a few blocks. Because iron was still scarce, we used stone pickaxes for general mining and the iron pickaxe only for redstone. Before long, a huge cave entrance opened on Lillian's side, and she called out that it was a mine shaft, and I stopped, excited, since finding a natural cavern was exactly why I had come down. I told her to keep her stone sword ready and jumped down to look. The cavern was full of minerals, most of them exposed on the surface and quick to mine, but I had a second purpose down here besides ore, which was grinding monsters, because the land deed was crucial to me, and 20 by 20 would never be enough, so I had to accumulate gold coins to expand it. The moment I got the deed, I had decided I would build my own empire in this world, and that meant saving coins. I drew my stone sword, walked into the cavern, and set a torch to one side, and the once pitch-black shaft lit up, water trickling toward me through cracks in the rock. Lillian swung her stone pickaxe at the coal beneath her feet, while I pressed forward placing torches, and I had barely taken 2 steps when a white arrow struck me and I instantly lost 2 hearts. I clutched my chest in pain, nearly in tears, because in all my time here this was the first time a monster had actually hit me, and I had not expected it to hurt so much. Lillian noticed at once, frowned, swapped her pickaxe for her stone sword in a single breath, and before I could even locate the skeleton that shot me, she shot out like an arrow herself, and I heard several sharp cracks of colliding bone, followed by 5 gold coins dropping in. She stood with her sword, her golden hair moving with her, her face ice cold, because for Lillian I was the most important person, and anyone or anything that dared to harm me she would chase down and destroy no matter how far. I told her not to get so worked up, that it was just a skeleton, but she answered flatly that she could not allow anything to endanger my life, utterly stubborn with no room for negotiation. Touched but exasperated, I reminded her we had come down specifically to grind monsters, that we would meet plenty more and it was not as though I could not fight. She was still uneasy and offered to build me one of those little houses from before, calling it too dangerous down here, but I told her not to underestimate me, that I was very strong, and after a long back and forth she finally nodded. She was only thinking of me, so I always weighed her feelings when I spoke. I pocketed the bone and arrow the skeleton dropped, and we went deeper, finding plenty of iron and coal, the 2 of us holding nearly a stack of coal between us. I dug 5 or 6 redstone from the surface with the iron pickaxe. Just as I was about to put it away, several green-shirted, blue-trousered figures came shambling toward me, growling in voices hoarse as sawing wood. Lillian was alert as ever and charged the zombies the moment they neared, and I did not hold back either, raising my stone sword to join her, because what kind of man always lets a woman protect him? Zombies have 40 health and a stone sword deals 5, so it takes at least 8 hits each, and at range I never found a zombie troublesome, but up close now I actually felt weak. The sword's slight knockback meant that the instant I hit one, another stepped up, and one after another they overwhelmed me, until one zombie scratched me and the pain made my hand tremble so badly the sword nearly fell. At that, Lillian was fully enraged, lifting her blade as a strong wind swirled around her, and she tore into the surrounding zombies. Her speed and movements so fast they left me staring. Were those moves even something a human could pull off? While I was still dazed, she finished the whole batch without taking a scratch, and I could not help walking over to praise her, asking whether she really was that powerful. She shook her golden braids, put the sword away, and called it nothing, just a low-tier sword technique. And I told her I finally understood how she had held off all those zombies on her own back then, and gave her a thumbs up, never having expected a full-time maid to fight like that. With a bodyguard this strong, I no longer had to worry about being attacked, and she was so protective on top of it. But my curiosity was up, so I asked about that ring of wind around her, and she paused, then said it was something from another world that I did not need to understand right now. Another world, I repeated, surprised, asking whether she was from another world too, wondering if she meant some cultivation world or a place where spiritual energy had returned. She read the misunderstanding on my face and said it was not what I thought, that it was not really another world, just a place with some more special abilities, somewhere I would be able to go in the future, but that I should not think about it now, and should focus on mining. She smiled sweetly, clearly done answering, so I did not press, since even if such a place existed, it had nothing to do with me yet, and for now I only needed to mine, save coins, and survive well. After that small interlude, we kept searching the cavern, and as we walked I found an unfamiliar mineral on the rock face. I asked what it was, and Lillian glanced over and said it was salt ore. I was surprised and swapped my stone pickaxe for the iron one to dig it out, though it made sense since this world had more food modules and many recipes needed salt, so salt ore was natural enough, but there was only the single deposit and no more. Lillian watched me and remarked that I actually knew to use an iron pickaxe when she had thought I would reach for a stone one, and I chuckled and said nothing. We pressed on, digging up more iron and coal, but what surprised me most was 3 emeralds. In my old life I would have called them useless, but here they delighted me, because most wandering merchants trade in emeralds, so 1 emerald can equal a whole stack of building materials, which meant those 3 were roughly 3 stacks saved. After pocketing the emeralds I ate 2 pieces of rotten flesh, and though I ate it often the bitter taste still went down hard, the texture like a leather shoe, followed by 30 seconds of the hunger status. Seeing my pained face, Lillian's heart ached, and she pulled a roasted potato from her pack and offered it, telling me to eat it instead of rotten flesh, that she would go out tomorrow to find animals, so we would not lack food. I told her there was no need, that rotten flesh was fine for me, drank 2 cups of water to wash out the bitterness, and turned back the way we came. Both of us had a high activity level every day that drained our satiety fast, and demanded a lot of food, and the field grew too slowly to feed 2, while hunting animals burned more satiety than 1 piece of roast meat could ever return, so until the food problem was fully solved, I would keep eating rotten flesh. The mine was thoroughly picked over, so we climbed out and I filled the shaft back in with cobblestone, and as soon as we emerged I saw faint light through the trapdoor just after dawn. In truth, 2 days without sleep had left me exhausted, since this was a real world and a person who lived here had to rest. But I had things to do today, so sleep could wait. I climbed out of the trapdoor, judged the sun to be just past dawn, dug a hole directly above the basement, and poured a bucket of water into it, planning to open a field on the surface and protect it with the land deed, because if those few wheat and potatoes were stolen, we would face a survival crisis. I hoed a 9x9 patch, since 1 block of water moisturizes up to 4 blocks of land in each direction, making 9x9 the largest farm possible, then pulled the undeveloped vegetables from the riverside and replanted them in the new patch, leaving the nearly ripe potatoes where they were since they should be ready by night, and replanting them would be a loss. I enclosed the fields inside the land deed, finished the task, and let out a long breath, then opened the forum and started writing a post, because I had decided to do business with the humans of this world. The idea had been with me since I met the wandering merchant. If a merchant could trade with humans, so could I, and buying from me would offer more variety at far cheaper prices, so when survivors had to choose between the wandering merchant and me, it was no contest. I planned to sell furnaces and stone swords, exactly what everyone desperately needed and could not get from a merchant, since they had no cobblestone to trade, and without a stone sword they could not defend themselves at night, and without a furnace they could not cook meat. All of it solved now since they could buy these tools from me with oak logs. And here is the part they will never see coming. The real trick was deeper than convenience. Once someone bought a stone sword from me, they could kill monsters, and killing monsters gave gold coins, and gold coins were useless to them, so they would naturally trade those coins back to me, which was exactly what I wanted, because expanding 1 block of land cost 10,000 gold coins, and grinding that out myself would take an age. I had to start with other people first. Only then could I grow my city and build my own commercial empire. I finished a long stretch of text and hit send, and a post was born on the forum announcing that Kang Jae-yoon was selling various tools, stone swords and furnaces, priced at half a stack of oak logs or 20 gold coins each. The instant my post about the furnace went live, it shot to the top of the forum. People crowded into the thread, half of them stunned that they could buy a furnace with nothing but raw wood now, the other half drowning out the old curses with gratitude, swearing they would look down on anyone who dared badmouth me and still showed up to buy. A few wondered aloud how I was making any profit, since the wandering merchant charged a full stack of cobblestone for a single furnace, and I was taking half a stack of raw wood. They settled on the theory that I was buying from the merchant and reselling at a loss out of pure kindness, like some benevolent healer here to carry humanity through the disaster. A handful even teared up over it, insisting that mankind always united in the face of catastrophe. I read it and felt nothing close to that. They had me figured for a saint, when the truth was simpler. A growing number of them had started to suspect I made the furnaces myself, reasoning that no one could possibly mine enough stone to stockpile from the merchant. The thread ran hot, the overwhelming consensus swinging in my favor for once, and the few who still called me a liar and a killer got buried under the support. People grabbed armfuls of apples and set out toward the coordinates I had posted without waiting another minute. I figured I had a little time before the crowd arrived, so I built myself a shop. A small oakwood planks house went up beside the vegetable patch, 4x6x4, and I cut a 2x3 window into the front wall the way a newsstand opens to the street, with the wooden door set on the side so I could slip in and out. Inside, I placed a crafting table so I would not have to run back and forth wasting time. Then I crafted 4 chests, combined them into 2 large ones, and set them aside for the stone swords, since stone swords cannot stack and would eat my inventory slots if I carried them on me. For decoration, I crafted oak stairs and laid them below the window, which somehow only made the whole thing look even more like a newsstand. Something still felt unfinished. Item frames, I realized, and bolted out of the house. Lillian, watching the potatoes grow nearby, glanced over. I had been tinkering for so long that she had no idea what I was up to, but as long as I did not ask for her help, she left me to it. I climbed down the ladder, ran to the furnace, and dropped coal in the bottom slot and rotten flesh in the top. The flesh caught fire immediately, exactly as I hoped, and I nearly laughed out loud. This world had the rotten flesh to leather mod. I dumped in all 7 pieces I had, then called Lillian over and asked her for every scrap of rotten flesh on her. She wandered up from the river and handed me 14 pieces, asking whether I had run out of food to eat. I shook my head, too excited to hide it, and told her rotten flesh could be smelted into leather. She just said, "Oh," plainly unimpressed, because to her this was common knowledge in a world she had lived in her whole life. I threw 3 more pieces into the furnace and kept the rest for food. The leather smelted fast, 2 pieces done before we even finished talking. I pulled them out and combined 8 wooden sticks with 1 piece of leather at the crafting table to make 2 item frames. Out at the shop, I crafted a stone sword and a furnace, hung an item frame on each side, set the furnace in the left frame and the stone sword in the right, and just like that I had a respectable little storefront. Stone swords and furnaces burned through cobblestone fast. I had nearly 3 stacks on me, but it would not last. I planned to visit the wandering merchant from yesterday and trade for more. There was still farm work to do. I broke down 5 bones into 15 bone meal and walked to the riverside patch, where 2 potatoes were nearly ripe. I left those 2 alone and used the bone meal to rush 1 other potato and 6 wheat plants, which finished off the meal exactly. The harvest came back 2 potatoes, 6 wheat, and 10 wheat seeds, so my luck held. I planted the 2 potatoes and the 10 seeds in the newly opened field, then carried the 6 remaining wheat into the shop and crafted them into 2 breads. I asked Lillian whether she preferred bread to baked potatoes, and the moment she saw the loaves, her eyes lit up, and she was practically drooling. She nodded hard, took them from my hand, and beamed. I told her that if she liked it that much, I would open a field just for wheat so she would never run out, and she jumped for joy, rushed over, and kissed me on the cheek. I went red from my neck all the way to my toes. The flush would not leave my face. Part of me wanted to grab her and lecture her about how a boy and a girl could not just go around doing that, but the little one had no self-awareness at all, and had already skipped off to play in the river, bread in hand. I sighed at her, and the doting in it surprised me. I told myself to let it go, since it was not as if I had a girlfriend anyway, and turned my attention back to the shop. I rebuilt the flat roof into a triangle, which looked far better, and had barely finished when the first customers arrived. They spotted the sign hanging out front, the one advertising furnaces and stone swords, and grumbled their way over, half of them in awe that I had a whole vegetable garden when they were still chopping trees for their next meal. The moment they stepped inside, they recognized me from my foreign photos and started showering me with compliments, which only made me uncomfortable. I cut them off and told them to hurry up and buy something, since I had no time to chat. That snapped them out of it, and they got to the point, asking whether I had enough stock. I walked in, crafted 5 stone swords and 5 furnaces on the workbench, and told them they could have as many as they wanted. One grinned, pulled a full stack of oak logs from his backpack, and asked for a single stone sword and a single furnace. I took the stack and handed him the goods, expression flat. Trading a whole stack of logs for one sword and one furnace was a terrible deal for him. But to these people, who lived on apples and chopped trees all day, a stack of logs was nothing, and being able to convert wood into tools was beyond their wildest dreams. All 5 of them traded the same way, and in a few minutes I had 5 more stacks of oak logs, far faster than chopping wood myself. Of course it was a steal. I just kept my face blank. I stowed the logs in a chest. The group wanted to linger and talk, but I ignored them until they got the hint and left together. Not long after, 2 new posts went up. One about the vegetable patch and one about the shop. The doubters who had not believed stone swords and furnaces could be bought went quiet now that people were actually walking around with them, and the thread filled with customers raving about roasted meat after days of nothing but apples, urging each other to hurry over before I ran out of stock. The patch thread ran even hotter, people marveling that I had a field bigger than the ones in the villages, crying that they had never tasted bread in their lives, wondering whether I might one day sell food too. One floated the idea of sneaking in to steal vegetables, and another warned him that my girlfriend killed without blinking, which ended that conversation fast. Business ran heavy all day. The chests filled faster than I expected, so I added 2 more. As dusk came, the customers thinned, since most people dared not travel at night and would sooner box themselves into a sealed hole until dawn. I counted up and found 26 fresh stacks of oak logs in the chests. In 9 years of playing Minecraft, I had never seen that much wood at once. There really was strength in numbers. I closed the chests, planning to trade the logs for cobblestone tomorrow, since every scrap I had between me and Lillian was gone and I would have to shut down if I did not restock. Still, the empire was taking shape and I had a feeling it would not stay small for long. By evening, the riverside crops were ripe. I harvested 2 potatoes and the last 4 wheat, clearing the riverside field completely and finishing the rotation, then planted 6 wheat seeds and the 2 potatoes back into the dirt. The planting was a mess, but I had no real choice with so few potatoes and carrots from the village, so it would have to fill in slowly. After that, I leveled all the hoed ground I no longer needed back into plain dirt, since the patchy soil ruined the look of the place. It was full dark by the time I finished, and carried 4 ripe wheat back to the room. Lillian, who had played all day, was nodding off, perking up when I came in only to droop again a moment later. I smiled at how adorable she looked and told her to sleep if she was sleepy. No need to force herself awake. Patting her head, she rubbed her eyes, yawned, and lay down, asleep almost at once, mumbling something I could not catch. I got ready to lie down too, then noticed her bed and mine were pushed flush against each other with no gap, like one wide bed. That did not seem right. I stood there looking at the 2 little red beds, debating whether to separate them, when Lillian cracked her eyes open and sleepily told me to come sleep. Her golden hair fanned across the mattress, her face so soft and fragile and lovely that I had to swallow. She really did not have to be that tempting. I was a teenager in my prime after all, and I half wondered whether she was even afraid of what I might do. Maybe I just looked safe. I stroked her long hair, then dismantled my bed and moved it to the far side of the room, because the 2 of them side by side was a temptation I could not be trusted with. I settled my mind and slept. The next morning I opened my eyes to a delicate little face right beside mine, cherry lips parting with each breath, a faint flush on her fair cheeks. I froze for a second, then scooted back. Sometime in the night, she had quietly dragged her bed against mine again. I looked at the arrangement and knew exactly what had happened. The girl really did not pay attention to anything. I woke her, patting her and telling her to get up, sleepyhead. I had given up on lecturing her about the beds. I would never lay a hand on her, so if she liked sleeping near me, let her. She cracked one eye open and yawned so sweetly that something stirred in me the first time I had ever seen a girl look that good. Woking up, though I meant her no harm. I opened the trap door and climbed out. The sun was just right today, the wind lighter than yesterday, the oak leaves still rustling. I stretched, washed up at the river, and checked the field where the wheat and potatoes had barely grown overnight without sunlight. I crafted the 4 ripe wheat into bread for Lillian and put the leftover 1 into the miscellaneous box. She was still in bed, so I nudged her until she went to wash up, then ate 2 pieces of bread and drank 2 bottles of water to fill her hunger and thirst. It was still early, so I decided to check on the wandering merchant first. He lived close by and kept earlier hours than I did, so he was already open when I arrived. I greeted Motorson and he greeted me back warmly, glad to see me, since we had talked enough by now to become friends. He asked what I needed today. I told him I wanted cobblestone, as much as he had. He raised an eyebrow, surprised since cobblestone was not exactly prized, and asked what I needed it for. I said I had things to make, and he guessed building a house. Opening his pack to check, he had 10 stacks on him and figured that should be plenty. I asked the price and whether he would sell it all, and he was even more surprised that I wanted the whole lot. He named a price of 10 emeralds, or 11 stacks of oak log, explaining that a stack of logs and a stack of cobblestone were worth the same. But trading building materials came with a small surcharge. Friends or not, accounts had to balance. I had no objection. I did not want to shortchange him, and I was not hurting for 1 extra stack of logs, so I counted out 11 stacks and took his 10 stacks of cobblestone. Then I asked whether he could bring more tomorrow, since I would need it steadily. He looked a little put out and said his reserves were only about 20 stacks, and if I needed that much, I should go stock up at the market behind the fishing village, where it would be cheaper than he could sell it. The market. I had visited the fishing village before but never knew there was a market behind it. He nodded and told me there was a small one back there with plenty of merchants, where I could buy cobblestone in bulk. I thanked him and said I would go take a look. He told me I was welcome. I did not head straight to the market. With customers coming for furnaces and stone swords today, I went home first and handed the cobblestone to Lillian so she could open up while I was gone. She was playful, but she handled responsibility well, so I gave her the rundown and left the shop entirely in her hands. Then took the logs and set off. The market turned out to be exactly where Motorson said, a cluster of uneven little houses smaller than my own shop. Some merchants not even bothering with houses, just wool carpets thrown over the grass for stalls. People came and went in a steady stream. I followed the crowd and quickly found the building materials shop, larger than the rest, with a proper house and a young woman running it. She stood up the moment she saw me and asked, all enthusiasm, what I needed. I asked for cobblestone and how much she had. She rummaged through her boxes and told me she had 40 stacks in the warehouse. Surely enough. Relief washed over me. I had 15 stacks of oak log left, planned to keep one as a spare, and asked whether she would take logs for cobblestone. She seemed surprised, since she had expected me to trade dirt, and logs were generally harder to gather, so they ran a higher price. I pulled out 14 stacks and asked how much cobblestone they would buy. She exclaimed that 14 stacks meant I had to be a merchant too, and offered 14 stacks of cobblestone for them straight across, asking me to come back often. I had not expected that good a rate and could not help feeling pleased. Just as we finished counting and exchanging, a commotion broke out nearby, a crowd swelling around what looked like some kind of auction. Curiosity pulled me over. I shoved through the crowd and saw a bearded uncle with 5 young boys and girls tied to a fence with rope like dogs. Filthy, the color drained from their faces. I stared, not understanding. The man beside me explained it was a slave auction, that this trader came around every so often, and that if I fancied any of them I could buy one to keep as a servant at home. I was stunned. I genuinely had not expected slave auctions to exist in Minecraft. It was nothing like the game I had played, and the more it diverged, the more this place felt like a real world. The bidding opened at 10,000 gold coins, a number far out of my reach, with only a little over 100 on me. So after watching for a while, I went home. A long queue stretched in front of my shop, even busier than before. Lillian darting in and out, handing over a stone sword one moment, and a furnace the next. I walked up, and before I could even reach her, the people in line started snapping at me, demanding I stop cutting and go to the back, accusing me of being rude. I stood there bewildered, not sure whether to push through or retreat. My own territory, and I had to queue. I tried to slip around the line and enter through the side door, but the crowd, tempers already short, blocked me, jeering that I should line up like everyone else, and asking who I thought I was. Did I think I was Kang Jae-hyun? That I could just cut whenever I pleased? I really was Jae-hyun though. Just as the headache peaked, Lillian finished a furnace and a stone sword, handed them off, and saw me. Her eyes lit up and she threw her oak log aside, calling me master and rushing over, every bit of her attention on me. The whole crowd swiveled, repeating the word master back and forth, half of them realizing I was the actual Kang Jae-hyun, half of them flabbergasted that my beautiful girlfriend would call me that, muttering about what kind of shameful arrangement this was, others griping that I looked so ordinary yet landed a girl that pretty. I felt the embarrassment crawl up my neck, unsure whether they were praising me or roasting me. Once they knew who I was though, they cleared a path fast. I might be the big boss here, but no one was bold enough to disrespect me to my face. I slipped in through the side door, dumped the cobblestone into the box, and asked Lillian how things had gone. By her account, business had been strong all morning, the warehouse suddenly heavier by over 100 stacks of oak log, plus 200 gold coins. The coins came from yesterday's stone sword buyers, who had killed zombies through the night, earned gold off the kills, and come straight back to buy more swords. Watching it all come together, I finally felt some relief. I decided to save up, then buy a servant to mind the shop, since I had bigger plans that needed my time. Over the following days, Lillian and I lived and breathed the shop, and as we got into rhythm, so did the rest of the people dropped into this world. They bought swords and furnaces, gained the power to fight monsters, and finally ate roasted meat instead of raw. But variety in their diet brought a new problem to the surface, and the forum filled with complaints. Their thirst would not keep pace with their hunger. They could not drink the river water, and a single apple only restored 1 point of thirst, so even with a full belly their thirst bar sat half empty. People started tagging me by the dozen, begging for a solution, calling me Great One and Savior, demanding to know how to drink water again. I browsed the threads, telling myself I was studying how best to accumulate wealth. No, to better help the world. Either way, I planned to open a second shop selling glass bottles. Early the next morning, I left the shop with Lillian and set off for the market with 30 stacks of logs, trading them for 15 stacks of cobblestone and 15 stacks of sand. With swords and furnaces selling fast, my cobblestone was always short, and I had to restock nearly every day. Back home, I crafted a few more furnaces, split the sand among them, and set it smelting into glass. Furnaces I had plenty of, but coal I did not. I checked my purse and found only 2,520 gold coins, and a merchant had quoted me 2,000 for a single stack of coal. Far too steep, so I gave up on buying it. As dusk fell, I had Lillian close early, and the moment the sun dropped, she cheerfully chased everyone off. In the evening, I cleared the whole field, pulling 15 potatoes and 38 wheat, and since the carrots had been maturing too slowly, I yanked them all and handed them to Lillian to eat. I replanted the potatoes and wheat seeds, then took her back down through the trapdoor, where 8 furnaces sat smelting glass, the sand crackling loudly enough that sleep tonight would be impossible. I pulled the leftover wheat from the box, which brought the day's total to exactly 39, enough for 13 loaves of bread to keep Lillian fed for a while. I handed them over, ate 2 pieces of rotten flesh myself, and rinsed the taste away with clean water. I had grown used to rotten flesh by now. With food and water handled, I prepared a few stone pickaxes and took Lillian mining. Since buying coal at the market cost far too much, I had already cleared the old natural cave, so this time I dug straight ahead in a line. Coal ore was common enough that we hit a little every few steps, and at the 11th layer iron ore and redstone came easy, with the occasional emerald or lapis lazuli glinting in the walls. After half a day we had 2 or 3 more stacks of coal, though probably not enough to smelt 15 stacks of glass. Lillian asked, sounding tired, whether we really had to keep digging. The lack of enthusiasm in her voice tugged at me. I told her to head up and sleep if she was worn out, since I wanted to build a glass bottle shop tomorrow and this coal would not quite cover it. But she sat down on the stone and refused. I rubbed her golden pigtail and tried again to send her up, and she would not budge no matter how I coaxed her. So in the end, I let her stay. I went back to digging, and as I pulled and chipped, I broke into an opening with a faint light bleeding through it, which stopped me cold. A natural cave had no light source unless there was lava. I widened the hole, and the view sharpened into an artificial mine shaft exactly like the ones I used to dig. A 2x2 passage running off into the dark. Rails laid along the floor with the odd minecart on them. Torches everywhere. Spider webs clinging to the wooden fence frames. Places like this usually crawled with spider spawners. I walked in. Coal, iron ore, redstone. All of it studded the walls, so I called Lillian over and started clearing the ores. A few steps in, a black spider scuttled at me, far faster than any zombie, on me almost before I registered it. My reflexes carried me, dodging its lunge, swapping my pickaxe for a stone sword, slashing in. Its health read 27 out of 32, double the original 16 like every monster in this version. But one spider was nothing. I kept jumping clear of its bites and cutting it down until it died. Then the world channel chimed, congratulating me on the first kill on a spider and dropping 10,000 gold coins straight into my backpack with a clear bright ding. I had put the sword away, grinning. I had not expected a single spider to be worth that. Talk about reaching for a pillow the moment you wanted to sleep. With this, I could finally afford a slave. I had not realized the spider first kill was still unclaimed after so many days, but it made sense. Most people had stone swords now and the means to fight, yet the doubled monster health and the way they swarmed in packs at night meant anyone caught outside after dark would face more than one, and a surrounded man died in the wilderness. So they stayed cautious, swinging only when a zombie walked right up to them and avoiding the rest. I was overjoyed and lost all interest in mining, so I took Lillian, skimmed the surface ores off the shaft, and went home. Off the back of this first kill, I decided to claim the first kill on every monster. Lillian had told me before that besides the very first reward, a maid egg, the rest were lucky blocks, so I had not cared much. Now I changed my mind. Lucky blocks could spit out something incredible, and I wanted them all. The moment the spider kill registered, the world channel detonated again. Everyone trading horror stories about the fast, ugly, poisonous spiders that had killed their friends. Half of them lamenting that the reward should have been theirs, if only they had been braver. Most of the chatter circled back to me. Meanwhile, the research department had been buying up furnaces and stone swords for my shop, one to use and one to dissect, and no matter how hard they studied them, they could not figure out how they were made. In the research department, Eyeglass's man approached his boss timidly to report that I had taken yet another world-first kill, asking what they should do. Li Xiangmin was already seething. On Blue Star, he had run the research department with such authority that no one dared cross him. And now, in a world he could not crack, unable to recruit a soul, mocked at every turn, the indignity was unbearable. He demanded to know what I even wanted, insisting the department had shown me more than enough respect. Eyeglasses, man, looking awkward, ventured that the fault might be theirs, that the foreign consensus called them arrogant, too high on themselves, which was why I refused to join. Li Xiangmin exploded at the word arrogant, snapping that this was already the most humble the department had ever been, and the secretary fell silent while his boss scrolled the forum. The truth was that Li Xiangmin had no idea how to survive here at all, his food and water provided by the staff beneath him, his days spent browsing threads. He still had not grasped that this was no longer Blue Star. He decided he would post again, not to recruit me this time, but to ask me to cooperate with the research department, certain that was generous enough. In his heart, I was utterly unworthy of the honor, but the department needed something from me. Everything I had figured out in this world, all that prestige, was being claimed by me alone, and to him that was intolerable. The glory had to belong to the research department, so from now on everything I created would have to bear their name. He wrote up a cooperation invitation, tagged me, and posted it, fully confident I would accept. The forum erupted, people stunned that Lee Seung-min had personally reached out, that the department had finally admitted their attitude was the problem, downgrading recruitment into a cooperation request. Some bet I would agree at last, one swearing to livestream himself eating filth if I did, others insisting I was thriving alone and had no reason to share the glory. I had seen the invitation too. I simply did not understand why the research department fixated on me. I was perfectly fine on my own, doing whatever I liked, and saw no reason to be fenced in by anyone. The department was an empty shell, and I wanted nothing to do with it. To stop my forum from buzzing nonstop, I wrote a single reply and posted it for everyone to read at once. In it I said hello, that I was Kang Jae-hyun, that I had received all the recent invitations, and would answer them all here together. I said this world was nothing like Blue Star, and I hoped certain people in the research department would put their energy into actual science rather than into me. I said I would never join, because today's civil servants were hollow, that they did not even know the basic rules of survival, so there was nothing to cooperate on. I said I was not targeting anyone in particular, only stating that the current research department was garbage, and I hoped the invitations would stop, because the constant buzzing of my forum was getting annoying. The thread detonated all over again, people howling at the line about the buzzing being annoying, loving that I had answered Lee Seung-min straight to his face, and reminding the man who had wagered on me joining to start preparing his livestream. The onlookers lost their minds the second the post went up, marveling that I had made a whole thread just to call Lee Seung-min trash, that I was the only one alive who would directly confront the Minister of Scientific Research of the State Council, declaring their love for a man whose every move surprised them. Lee Seung-min, for his part, read it with his face flushing red with rage, sputtering that I was ungrateful, that being considered by the research department was a tremendous honor, and that refusing was one thing but openly humiliating him was another, entirely. He had been so sure I would accept this time. He raged that he was the Minister of Scientific Research of the State Council, that without the State Council I was nothing, that I clearly thought a furnace and a stone sword could overturn the world. Before he had swallowed every slight because I had never answered him directly. This time I had, and in front of everyone. There was no tolerating it now. He spat that we would all see what else I could come up with, then turned to Eyeglasses Man and ordered the department to work day and night, refusing to believe his entire team could not surpass one man. The secretary wanted to talk him down but knew it was useless, so he sighed and left to pass along the order. At that exact moment I sneezed and rubbed my nose, wondering whether I had caught a cold. I opened the miscellaneous box and dropped in the spider eyes and string I was carrying, then crafted 2 more boxes and sorted the minerals into one of them so they would be easy to find next time. With the ores organized, I added the 5 fresh stacks of coal to the furnaces, though the sand was still smelting and the full 15 stacks of glass would take ages. Rather than wait, I grabbed a stack of oakwood planks, opened the trapdoor, and climbed out into a sky already bright. I picked a spot by the field and built a second stall the same size as the first, set a display frame on it, and placed a water-filled glass bottle inside. The glass bottle shop was done. One problem, its land deed coverage was too small, leaving only half the building protected and the other half exposed to anyone who wanted to break it. I had no gold to upgrade the deed, so I shoved everything to the protected left side, a workbench, a furnace, and 2 boxes, and left the right empty. Everyone knew my location now, and I had no guarantee against thieves. Once the water shop was up, Lillian woke, washed at the river, and came in through the side door. She had carried the whole shop by herself these past busy days, and even just making furnaces and stone swords all day was physically draining. She yawned, sat down, and a customer arrived almost immediately since stone swords lost durability fast and brought a steady stream of repeat buyers. The new shop stirred up its own crowd, people puzzling over the display frame and the water bottle, never having seen one front of them venturing the bold guess that it might be for drinking water. Screenshots hit the forum under a headline calling it a suspected water cup for replenishing thirst, and the thread split between hopefuls who saw the days-long thirst debate and figured I had solved it for them, and cynics who scoffed that I was no creator god and this was just my newest scheme to drain their coins. The usual argument followed, one side daring the cynics not to use it if they hated it so much, the other side calling the whole thing blood money. I had no idea any of this was happening. I was already on my way to the market with 30 stacks of logs, trading them as usual for 15 stacks of cobblestone and 15 of sand, since the shop swallowed cobblestone daily and my backpack could only hold so much. With my gold coins in hand, I went back to where the slave auction had been held, hoping to bring a worker home, but the bearded uncle was nowhere to be found. I wandered the market without spotting him, then noticed a kind-looking old woman at a nearby stall, and walked over to ask when the man who auctioned people would return. The old woman straightened up and asked whether I was looking to buy a slave. I told her plainly that I wanted to take a look, and a flicker of distaste crossed her eyes, though though she answered politely that Panday only came around once a month and would not be back for another 2 weeks. The answer made me frown. I had 2 shops to run and no staff, and I could not wait 2 weeks for one bearded trader. Expanding the land deed needed a great deal of gold, so the glass bottle shop had to open soon. I asked whether she knew anywhere else slaves were bought and sold. She kindly warned me that there was an underground auction in the fishing village, where slaves were cheaper and plentiful, but the place was dangerous and chaotic, and I might get robbed. I could tell she wished I would not go near such trade at all, that the thought of human lives being bought and sold sat badly with her, though she also seemed conflicted, since Panday himself was apparently a decent man. I knew none of her inner turmoil. I only knew I should go see the underground auction. I thanked her and headed for the fishing village. Following her directions, the auction lay east of the village, and I found the entrance without much trouble. A 2x2 opening followed by a long stone staircase, the passage dim and lined with uneven torches. The deeper I descended, the louder the shouting grew, until I reached the bottom and the underground auction opened up before me, merely identical to the ones I had seen in my past life. A wool stage at the center, and hundreds of dark oak chairs below. A revealingly dressed young woman was running the auction, and the current lot looked like a potion. I registered at the entrance, paid 100 gold coins as deposit, took a number plate, and went in. The place was neither large nor formal, so I got through smoothly. By the time my paperwork was done, the potion had sold, and I found a random seat. The lots came one after another, mostly enchanted books and potions, none of which I could afford anyway. Eventually, the auction reached the human trafficking segment, and the screams in the hall sharpened. The first up was a pretty young girl, far higher in quality than Panday's stock, but her starting bid of 50,000 gold coins put her completely out of reach. And besides, I had no intention of buying a girl, since they could not do heavy labor. Lot after lot passed, and from beginning to end, not one man appeared. By the time the last dirtiest girl came out, I could not take it anymore and asked aloud whether there was a single man in the whole auction. The man beside me heard and explained that the rich men around here only like to play with women, so trafficking auctions ran female. It clicked for me then. These slaves were not bought as servants but as playthings for wealthy men. No wonder the old woman had looked at me so strangely. I smiled helplessly and turned back to the stage. This last girl was especially dark, her face dirty and crossed with a few strange scratches, but her starting price was only 5,000, and even that low, almost no one wanted her, because she was simply too ugly. A few older men tossed out token bids, then went quiet, and the auctioneer asked whether anyone would go past 10,000. I hesitated, then raised my plate and called 11,000. The man who had spoken to me earlier looked at me like I was an idiot, sneering that buying a girl this ugly for 11,000 was a waste, asking whether I had simply never seen a woman before, filing me away as some lifelong bachelor. Me, never having seen a woman. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. Of all the things to accuse me of, that one missed by a mile, since the most beautiful woman in the world was my own. Who in this world could match Lillian? But I could hardly explain to him that I was buying the girl for labor, and even if I had, he would never have believed me. No one raised the bid. An ugly girl was not worth that much gold to anyone there. The auctioneer called 11,000 once, twice, 3 times, and brought down the hammer, selling her to me. With that last lot, the auction wound down. Those who had won nothing left first, while winners like me carried our plates to the back, since the plates matched our names and made it impossible to run, and anyone who tried would be stopped at the entrance. Being last to bid, I was last to settle. The staff counted out my coins and handed the girl over, their looks toward me distinctly off, unable to fathom why anyone would pay 11,000 for a girl this ugly, including the girl herself. She watched me approach, her neck shrinking back instinctively, her clear eyes brimming as if they might overflow. She asked, voice unexpectedly crisp and melodious for her appearance, what I wanted to do. I looked at her frightened face and sighed, because she was a pitiful thing. I crouched down to meet her eyes and told her my name was Jae-hyun, then asked hers. She recoiled as I leaned in, tears welling, and answered in a whisper as faint as a mosquito that her name was Chris. I reached out of habit to ruffle her hair, and the gesture startled her so badly that her body twisted as if she were about to drop to her knees. I caught myself and withdrew my hand, then told her it was a beautiful name, that she did not need to be afraid, that I would never hurt her, not now and not ever. She looked up uncertainly and gave a small hesitant nod. Logic told her not to trust a stranger so easily, but something in the way I spoke seemed to settle her. I gently took her small hand and led her out, telling her I would take her home. Outside, the loiterers were still chatting, and the moment they saw me leave hand in hand with the ugly girl, the mockery started asking which sucker had bought her, jeering that my taste ran ugly, that no woman waited for me at home. Underground auctions drew a rough crowd with foul mouths, and they piled it on one after another. Chris, sharp enough to know the insults were about her, dropped her head, tears nearly spilling, and tightened her grip on my hand, terrified I might hit her for the shame of it. She had always known she was ugly, always been insecure, pointed at even as a slave. She whispered an apology. That apology made my heart twist. She had done nothing wrong. Why should she be the one to say sorry? I stopped walking and stared the hooligans down, a cold light in my eyes. and the look caught them off guard before they remembered themselves and felt embarrassed for flinching. They snapped back, demanding why I was glaring, asking whether they could not even comment on the ugly girl I had bought, jeering that no amount of staring would make her pretty. Each word drove Chris's head lower. I kept staring. I had meant to let it go, since the old woman had warned me robbery and murder were common down here, but these men were too far out of line, and if I did not teach them a lesson, they would never learn their limits. They took my stillness for fear and laughed colder, asking why I had gone quiet, whether I was scared dumb. One swaggered up to slap me, and before his hand could land, he was kicked 10 meters back into an oak tree. A golden-haired girl stood over the man she had just sent flying, a stone sword in her hand, her hair whipping in the wind, and she told him his dirty hands were not worthy of touching me. The hooligan grimaced and stammered, asking who she was. She said coldly that he was not worthy of knowing her name, then raised her hand and slit his throat in one motion. His life ended on the spot. Everyone gasped. They had never expected a woman to appear from nowhere and kill without a word. They liked to make trouble, sure, but they would never have committed murder, and this stranger had drawn a knife before they had even done anything. They roared at her, demanding to know who she was and what gave her the right to kill, insisting they had never provoked her, while Lillian looked up, pointed at me, and said that I was her master, Kang Jae-yun, and asked whether they really thought they were worthy of yelling at me. The word master rippled through them. They gaped at me, stunned that this woman out of nowhere was my servant, when they had just been mocking me for never touching a woman. Now they were the joke. With Lillian's beauty, every woman in the world combined could not match half a finger of her, and they had laughed at the man who had her. It was absurd. They scrambled to recover, insisting that none of it justified killing, that a few words did not warrant indiscriminate murder, asking whether they thought no one in the fishing village could rein them in, and a few bolder ones bolted off to fetch the village chief, the rest sneering at Lillian to wait and see that the chief would have her arrested and burned alive. The more they talked, the more worked up they got. I listened with some helplessness. The village chief of the fishing village, he would not actually kill Lillian, would he? I watched the farce calmly, and Lillian stood her ground without the faintest intention of leaving, completely at ease. The crowd was baffled. Should she not be panicking, plotting an escape? Why was she just standing there as if she had not understood that the chief would burn her alive? A woman holding a child looked at her with real concern and urged her to leave before it was too late, warning that she clearly was not from the fishing village and would not escape once the chief arrived. Several other village women kindly told her to go, offering to hold the men off, since they all knew the ruffians had started this by humiliating me, and that if not for that, Lillian would never have killed. The ruffians did not see it that way. They sneered that she had killed on fishing village ground and could not expect to walk away, that not only she but I would die here too, that they would have blood for blood. One added, leering, that since the girl was so beautiful, she might as well entertain the brothers before she died. They sized Lillian up, greed glinting in their eyes, boasting that they had seen countless women at the trafficking auctions, and never one this beautiful. Never noticing my expression darken, I was about to draw my sword and teach them a lesson, when the village chief arrived, white-haired and aged as ever, leaning on his cane, his trembling legs carrying him forward. The two ruffians who had fetched him wore smug grins, crowing that the chief was here, that we had dared to act so brazenly on fishing village ground, demanding to see what we would do now, calling Lillian a demoness, who would surely be captured and burned. The chief, who had heard only that someone had killed a person on his village's ground, had come seething, ready to teach the killer a lesson. Then he saw who stood surrounded. In an instant he understood everything, and he kicked the two ruffians, calling them beasts, snarling that they would burn her, that he would sooner burn them, striking their heads with his cane in a fury, his teeth trembling. They dodged and protested that the woman had killed one of their own, but his cane never stopped. He demanded whether they even knew who she was, swearing that if any of them dared touch her, he would burn them first, then coughed so hard from rage that his hands finally fell. The other ruffians nearby froze. They were arrogant by nature but held this old man in deep respect, and seeing him this furious, they panicked, begging him not to be angry, apologizing, pleading with him not to harm himself. Their attitude softening fast, he glared, his coughing easing, his breathing steadying, and told them the woman before them was the master of Echo Valley. He asked whether they had any idea who that was, that she was the one who had saved this world 10 years ago, that wanting to burn her meant they no longer wished to live. The word struck the ruffians dumb. They looked at Lillian in astonishment, never imagining this fiercely imposing woman was the master of Echo Valley. Had they known, they would not have dared challenge her in the slightest. One of them looked at me and asked about the man, not understanding why the master of Echo Valley would protect me so fiercely. The chief glared at him, plainly disappointed, and told them I was the master of Echo Valley's own master, that I was the last person they should have provoked, then sighed. For a full-time maid, the most important person in life is her master. As long as he lives, she stays loyal forever, and for Lillian, I was that person. These men, fearless of death, had brought trouble to me, so there was no chance she would let them off. The chief walked up to me and dropped to his knees with a heavy thud. The action startled me, and I rushed to help him up, since a man that old kneeling to me would only shorten his life. But he was stubborn now, refusing to rise no matter how I pleaded, calling me Lord Lin, saying these children had grown up under his watch, that they were unruly but not bad-hearted, begging a magnanimous man like me not to hold it against them. His eyes teary as he kowtowed again and again. It left me unsettled. I helped him to his feet and brushed the dust from his clothes, telling him he need not apologize, that the fishing village had helped us before, and that a man his age should not be kneeling to me. I said it, though I kept my composure throughout. The chief looked at me with a flicker of feeling, and the other ruffians, exchanging glances, came over to apologize as well. I told them they did not need to apologize to me, but to Chris, and patted her head. She still seemed terrified, shrinking back as they neared, hiding behind me. I pulled her out gently and told her not to be afraid, that I was here, and the ruffians' faces went stiff. They could accept apologizing to me, since I was the master of Echo Valley's master, but apologizing to Chris, the lowest lot at a trafficking auction, was harder to swallow. Still, under the chief's fierce glare, they bowed to her respectfully. I could feel how nervous Chris was as they apologized, but there was an unfamiliar glow in her eyes. It was probably the first time in her whole life anyone had ever shown her respect. With that settled, I brought Lillian and Chris home, because Lillian and I shared a telepathic bond. The instant she had sensed my anger, she abandoned the shop and tore off to the fishing village, which left my storefront mobbed and impassable. The crowd outside grumbling about where Lillian had gone, complaining that they had waited forever only for her to vanish, fretting that they needed a stone sword for tonight and that we had better not be closing. Someone sharp-eyed finally spotted me coming back with her, and the whole line lit up with relief and impatience, demanding to know whether we still had stock. Lillian sighed at them, slipped in through the side door, and got back to work, since the shop was too busy to leave for a moment. Watching her dutifully take her post, I had to smile. She did not enjoy this kind of drudgery, but with no extra hands she would have to bear it a little longer. And not for long, because once the glass bottle shop opened, I meant to buy a few slaves, hand all the shops to them, and free her sooner. I did not want the person I cared about worn down by busy work. With her abilities, she could do far more than make furnaces all day. I took Chris to the river to bathe, since she had not washed in so long that the mud rubbed off her in layers. Once she was clean, I realized she was not actually dark at all. Her skin ran only a shade deeper than most, even and unblemished. Nothing like the ugliness I had imagined, more an exotic kind of beauty. I teased her, asking why a girl this pretty was so insecure, and led her back to the room. I did not catch the way her whole face went red after I said it, or the strange light that flickered in her eyes. Chris had rarely been recognized by anyone in her life, and today I had handed her affirmation and safety, so that for the first time she felt the world could turn beautiful because of one person. She followed quietly behind me, and I had no idea what was unfolding inside her, because all I had done was treat her like a person. At the workbench, I crafted her a set of stone sword, stone pickaxe, and stone axe and gave them to her, since I could not watch over her every minute and she needed to learn to live and help out on her own. I had bought her to solve problems, not add to them. After explaining what each tool was for, I handed her 3 glass bottles for drinking water. Food I could not solve yet, since all of it had gone to Lillian, so for now Chris and I would both subsist on rotten flesh until the next batch of grain matured. Even 2 or 3 people stretched the supply thin, and once the glass bottle shop went up and the population grew, food would become my biggest headache. But that was a worry for later. With Chris settled, I handed her to Lillian, who over the next day would teach her everything before Chris took over the shop entirely. Then I opened the forum. Some threads were about my blunt reply to the research department, which had left them in a precarious spot, the damage small but the insult enormous. The rest were about my new shop, people speculating from the glass bottle in the display box whether I had cracked the thirst problem, tagging me to ask when it opened and what it sold. Most of them sure it had to be water, while the usual skeptics scoffed that they were treating me like an omnipotent god. I felt like laughing at the pile of comments. I wrote up a fresh post announcing the glass bottle shop would open tomorrow, and below it I spelled out exactly how the bottle worked, down to how many thirst points a single bottle of water restored. The moment it went live, the notifications fired off to everyone following me, and the thread rocketed to the top of the hot list. People screaming that they had called it, that the savior had solved their thirst, daring the old critics to come back and keep criticizing as long as they bought nothing, and hounding the man who had sworn to livestream eating filth to come forward. Most of them were overjoyed that the long water problem finally had an answer. But it came with one catch. I had priced each glass bottle at 500 gold coins. The forum balked. 500 gold coins meant 100 zombies, since a kill paid 5, and they griped that I clearly did not see them as people, that I had turned them into monster farming machines, that swinging a stone sword burned durability and replacing it cost more gold on top. They called it blood money, insisting a true savior would price it lower, while the few who understood snapped back, asking whether they even knew how hard glass was to make. No matter how loud they got, I would not lower the price, because the number was deliberate. I knew exactly how hard 500 gold coins was for an ordinary person to save, and that was the point. A glass bottle was not a stone sword. It did not wear out, so there were no repeat customers, which meant a high price served me better. If I made it cheap enough to buy after a few kills, that was putting the cart before the horse. I sold stone swords cheap on purpose, so people could earn more gold killing zombies, because only when they had more gold could I extract more from them. And the way to extract it was to price their daily necessity. No matter how they hated the cost, they had to drink water every day, so they had to buy. I was not worried about a backlog either, since the number was achievable for some, just not for everyone. My plan was to sell first to the elites among the world's 900 million people, then to the rest as they slowly saved up. No unsold stock ever. That was the whole of my business sense. The keyboard warriors could not accept it, ranting that this was disgusting, that I was squeezing money wherever I could. Why not just rob them, swearing they would eat apples forever before they paid, urging a full boycott so I would be forced to drop the price. To me, their noise was irrelevant, because the people who could actually afford a bottle were not the ones complaining. Only the broke ones raged here, and they were not my customers. Most of them eventually calmed down and accepted that they would have to save, since water was survival. Things unfolded exactly as I had pictured. By nightfall, the shop had closed, and Lillian came home exhausted from a day of minding the store and teaching Chris, though Chris had learned quickly and caused little trouble. I coaxed Lillian off to rest, then quizzed Chris on the shop's affairs, and she answered everything smoothly, so I patted her head, content. From tomorrow, she would run shop number 1 while Lillian took the glass bottle shop. Lillian would surely sulk in the morning, so I decided to spend the day with her. Early the next morning, both girls woke, washed at the river, and started their work. Chris had grown familiar enough that she handled shop number 1 without much trouble, since making swords and trading furnaces was not hard. The line outside her shop stayed long while the glass bottle shop sat desolate, and the queuing customers laughed at the sight, jeering that nobody could afford a 500-coin bottle, that I should close it early, that yesterday's solved water problem now looked like a joke. They spoke loudly, plainly meaning for me to hear, but I did not take them seriously. I waited by the empty glass bottle shop, and before long someone walked up, calmly asking for a bottle and pulling out 500 gold coins as if it were nothing. I took the coins, handed over the bottle, looked up, and froze, because the man in front of me was Ha Tae-sung, whom I had met before. He could not help smiling at my dazed expression, and asked, all easy familiarity, how business had been lately, since he had heard it was booming. I answered flatly that it was not bad. I had never been talkative and we had clashed a little in the past, so my tone was naturally cold. He did not mind lingering by the shop with no intention of leaving. After an awkward silence, another customer arrived, carefully counted out 500 gold coins, and confirmed the price before handing it over, and I passed him a bottle. The shop had only just opened and already 2 bottles were gone, 1,000 gold coins in a moment. This was far faster than grinding monsters, working myself half to death. Looks like getting rich means going into business, and I was right. 500 gold coins was brutal for an ordinary person, but trivial for a certain kind of person, and among 900 million people, there were always exceptional ones. So in the early going, I only needed to sell to the cream of that crowd. Ha Tae-sung kept hovering nearby, which bothered me at first, but as the bottles moved, I put him out of mind. To prepare for the rush, I crafted 4 chests, combined them into 2 large ones, and set them inside, then crafted the full 15 stacks of smelted glass into bottles, and stored them, since empty bottles stack and save space. 960 bottles sat in the chests. Enough for days. By noon, I had sold 40 bottles for 20,000 gold coins. Money that would take shop number 1 a month to match, but the glass bottle shop made in half a day. Even I had not expected this. As bottles sold, the forum buzzed with confirmations, buyers swearing the bottle never lost durability, that 1 bottle of water restored 3 points of thirst, that all their monster grinding had finally paid off, that they could drink their fill at last and were moved to tears. The skeptics who had called it overpriced went quiet, and most people, now envious, vowed to grind monsters all night until they could afford one too. Once I confirmed the glass bottle shop ran smoothly, I handed it to Lillian. By then, all the field crops had matured, so I harvested the potatoes and wheat and replanted the seeds. 15 potatoes had doubled to 30, half replanted and half kept for rations, and 40 wheat gave me over a stack of seeds which I planted before crafting the wheat into 13 loaves for Lillian, since she preferred bread to potatoes. If not for her, I would never grow wheat, since bread costs far more than potatoes. No choice. I have to spoil my maid. After replanting, I went back down to mine, since I was short on iron and redstone for an automated redstone farm. I had only 13 redstone and a double-layered farm needed at least a full stack. So I took my iron pickaxe down into the shaft. The old artificial mine shaft was nearly stripped, so I blocked its entrance with cobblestone and pushed forward, turning up plenty of coal and some iron and redstone. Mining always coughs up a surprise. I broke into another cave mouth, held up a torch, and dropped in. The cave was narrow, its sides mossy and cracked, very old, with the low growls of zombies echoing not far off. A few steps in, I found an entrance ringed with iron bars, and I understood at once. I had dug into a dungeon. I walked in. The space was cramped, the mossy stones slick underfoot. Even the walls wet and slippery. The construction was too realistic for comfort. The entrance was caged in iron bars, the air thick with a moldy stench, so I pulled out my iron pickaxe, dug down the bars, and stepped through. The deeper I went, the heavier the humidity grew, so I planted a torch in the wall, and the moment the light came on, a zombie rushed me. Its movements were slow, no threat at all, and I dodged it cleanly and swung my stone sword at its head, killing it easily. But a dungeon like this always held more, so I stayed careful. A few steps along, I found a loot chest holding a cocoa bean, a music disc, and a wheat, all of which I took. Dungeon loot rarely held redstone, but might give diamonds, so I searched carefully. 2 skeletons appeared from somewhere and loosed arrows, but my reflexes carried me past both, and I closed the distance in 2 breaths. You dare shoot at me? I slashed the first skeleton, the sound of bone and stone sword cracking through the dungeon, and it died before it could react, dropping a bone and a bow. The second kept firing, but I cut it down in a few swings. Then I planted a torch and found, not far off, a monster spawner with a small skeleton sealed inside. A skeleton spawner. Since bones speed crop growth, I capped it with 5 torches all around to preserve it, planning to come back later to farm bones. The rest of the layer held 2 more loot chests, one with a sausage, an iron horse armor, and a saddle, the other with a name tag, 3 coal, a wheat bread, a green music disc, and a golden apple. I carried all of it, since the small junk might prove useful, and a golden apple is always worth keeping. I bit into the sausage, its skin crisp, the juice bursting out, the meat satisfying, and remarked to myself that the food in this world was genuinely excellent. After finishing it, I drank a bottle of water until both my hunger and thirst were full. Fed and watered, I climbed the spiral staircase outside to the second layer, where the spawner was for spiders. 2 crawled at me at once, far faster than zombies, and 1 bit my leg, sending a grimace through me and a poison effect. I slashed both apart in a few swings, picked up the drop string and spider eye, planted a torch, and went to the reward chests. One held an iron ingot, a golden apple, and a pile of redstone dust, the other beetroot and pumpkin seeds, and a chili pepper. Though I already had plenty of seeds from clearing weeds, since this world's food mod dropped all sorts beyond the usual wheat seeds. I took everything and sealed the spider spawner. The dungeon held only zombies, skeletons, and spiders, so nothing along the way troubled me beyond that 1 spider bite. My only regret was finding no diamonds. I climbed back down to the mine shaft, sealed a small spawner there with oakwood planks to mark it for later, and kept digging forward until I broke into a natural cave rich with redstone. After who knows how long, I had a full stack, and I left the shaft. By the time I came out, it was the next day. Lillian saw me finally emerge and looked ready to cry, so I ruffled her head, comforted her a moment, and coaxed her back to the glass bottle shop, since I had not meant to be gone a full day and night. The girls handed me all the gold coins, and over my absence, the 2 shops had earned 59,880 coins, nearly 60,000, almost all of it from the glass bottle shop. Even I was surprised. I packed the gold away, and Lillian came over again, mentioning that Ha Tae-sung still had not left. Ha Tae-sung. I raised an eyebrow, puzzled, and asked what he was doing. Lillian, pouting, said she did not know that he had built a little house here last night and settled in, and that since I forbade her from hurting people casually, she had left him alone, though it seemed he had something to discuss with me. I told her I would go see. I sorted my backpack into the storage chests first, since I had thrown away plenty in the dungeon for lack of slots. There was no teleportation in this world, no way to ferry 1 load home and pop back for another, so I always lost useful items out exploring. I wondered whether this world had a backpack mod. If it did, I would make one. After organizing, I gave Lillian the sausages and wheat bread from the dungeon, telling her to try one since I already had, and rubbed her head. She picked up a sausage and gnawed happily. Not far off, Chris watched her with envy. Over these 2 days, she had learned that I doted on Lillian above all, always giving her the best, especially food, since I ate rotten flesh while Lillian ate the best in the house. Chris pulled her gaze away. I put the 15 potatoes into the furnace to bake, then climbed out into the early morning, the sun just risen, both girls not yet working. After they washed up, Ha Tae-sung emerged from his little house, joy flashing in his eyes at finally seeing me. He greeted me familiarly and asked whether I was back. I looked at him and frowned, asking why he was still here. He said he wanted to discuss something. I washed my face at the river and asked what. He said straight out that he wanted to come help me, that I did not need to pay him, that he only wanted to stay. The request baffled me, and I asked whether he truly needed nothing. He confirmed it firmly, saying he would even find his own food if I did not provide any. Could it be he's after my good looks? I asked what the catch was, and he said there was none, that following me he felt he could learn a great deal. I thought it over, walked to the field, and planted all the wheat seeds and chili peppers, then told him flatly that I did not need him. The truth was, I was badly short of hands, but I did not want his help, because I did not understand him and did not trust him. My assistants would manage my money, and an outsider was wrong for that. Compared to Ha Tae-sung, I far preferred slaves bound by contracts of servitude, because with the contract in my hand, they could never betray me. He was not surprised by the refusal. He simply said he would wait until I had thought it through, then returned to his little house as if nothing had happened, with no intention of leaving. I wanted to push him off, but the land beside mine was not mine either, so I let it go, figuring I could drive him off when I expanded my territory later. With that out of the way, I busied myself with the redstone farm. Down in the room, I counted nearly 2 stacks of redstone, enough for a farm, though not a double-layered one. So I would build a single layer first and add to it later. I crafted 10 redstone torches, then made 5 redstone repeaters by setting a redstone in the middle, a torch on each side, and freshly smelted cobblestone underneath. I also needed 4 pistons, simple enough, made by laying oak wood planks across the top, an iron ingot in the middle, a redstone beneath it, and cobblestone beneath it, and cobblestone on both sides. I had mined plenty of iron, so the cost was nothing. Tools ready, I went outside, where both shops were already open and lines had formed, the customers glancing at me as I came out. I ignored them and built oak pillars up at the 4 corners to the 4th layer, then used planks to form a square shape at the top of each, a hollow in the middle, connected the 4 shapes with planks, and set pistons beneath them. The waiting crowd turned their full attention to me, puzzling over what I was doing, since it did not look like a thief fence, asking each other what the thing was, none of them knowing. Ha Tae-sung watched intently, recognizing everything but the piston, which he had never seen, and asked what it was. I glanced at him, considered, and told him it was a piston, that it could push water flow. The answer only confused him more, and the customers too, since they had never farmed and could not imagine why the fields would need watering when my crops had grown fine without it. Everyone stood there confused, theorizing that the piston must be packed with engines and mechanisms, far harder than a furnace, wishing aloud they could pry open my brain to see how I researched everything. Amid the chatter, I climbed onto the stepped frame and rubbed redstone dust onto the oak steps, 1 block at a time. Redstone is a stone, but laid down it becomes a line, a signal wire, 1 block per redstone connecting to each other, though the signal cannot travel far without a redstone repeater between them. After laying the dust and connecting the repeaters, I set an oak wood plank at the very front for the lever, since a signal cannot run without a switch. I placed the lever, and the whole redstone line lit up, a faint red glow, dim but clearly distinguishing on from off. I pulled the lever and the 4 pistons fired instantly, the upper plank separating from the body and resting below the square shape, which meant the farm was half done. Then I filled the 4 corner blocks with water from a bucket, hauling from the river 4 times, the water held in place by the piston planks beneath rather than flowing down. With the corners filled, I gathered a bucket of water and went home. Ha Tae-sung studied the structure but could not work out its purpose, and asked Lillian, basking on the grass, what the thing laid on top was. She yawned and told him it was redstone and redstone repeaters, that he would not understand if she explained. In her view, everyone in this world but me was a fool, unable even to survive, though in truth she did not know what I was building either, only the uses of the pistons, redstone, and repeaters, so she could not actually answer him. Seeing she would not bother with him, he kept studying the frame, recalling that he had seen redstone at the wandering merchants for around 5,000 gold coins a stack, which meant 1,000 monster kills, a sky-high sum. The others compared notes, some recalling redstone from mineral merchants, but none recognizing a redstone repeater, marveling that I always conjured new things. Lillian, still basking, finally spoke up to say a redstone repeater connects redstone signals, since the signal breaks over long distances, and needs the repeater in between. The crowd boggled at how complicated it sounded, asking whether it was some kind of circuit, whether a circuit even needed a signal connector, half of them admitting they had never figured out circuits in their old world, let alone redstone signals here. The more they talked, the more amazed they grew, agreeing that I was practically dragging the whole world's civilization forward single-handed, farmland and land and glass bottles and furnaces and swords, all of it from me. And they looked on the redstone farm with endless admiration. I knew none of the stir I was causing. At the workbench, I combined planks into wooden sticks, then crafted a pile of wooden fences and a single fence gate, since the field had to be enclosed or the water flow would scatter the crops everywhere when the farm ran. I climbed out, walked to the field, and fenced the whole thing in, leaving 1 block at the front for the gate. With that, the redstone farm was a complete success. The watching customers still would not leave, asking what the thing was for, whether it was finished, whether it was just a shed like the old farming sheds. I glanced at the crops, mostly unripe save a few potatoes and wheat, and told them to come back next time, that I would not demonstrate it today since the field was not ready. That spawned another forum thread about the redstone farm, the skeptics insisting it was useless, just a wooden frame, a shed at best, dismissing the whole legend and telling people to focus on surviving instead. Over the next 2 days, both shops grew busier. The glass bottle shop never suffered the forced price drop the forum had predicted. Business climbing every day, half its 960 bottles already sold. My gold reaching 300,000 far faster than I had expected. Enough in 3 days that I had thought would take weeks. I woke early and spent 200,000 to expand my land deed to 30 by 30, more than enough to cover the glass bottle shop. Then went to the population auction and spent 50,000 on a very beautiful girl. Not Lillian's equal, but far prettier than Chris. I put the new girl on shop number 1 and moved Chris to the glass bottle shop, since the bottle sales handled larger sums and I trusted Chris more than a newcomer. With everything arranged, Lillian no longer had to work, and she swayed her head about showing off for a while before running back to play in the river. The forum had filled with new threads, several outpacing the glass bottle traffic. The Ministry of Scientific Research had joined a village, announced they were living among the native residents, and from that found a survival method which they published with pictures. The top post revealing how a stone pickaxe precisely collects cobblestone and how a stone hoe is used to farm.